Alrighty, got us all together here in a little new spot. So, welcome to another episode of Lookout Podcast. I believe this might be episode 40 or 41. Joined with my good friend Rene Eustace again. How we doing, Rene?
Doing good. So, we have a real treat in store for you guys today. When we were doing my podcast, kind of toward the end of them, I kind of approached an idea to Luke about me being a guest moderator and me interviewing him. He interviews lots of us, and here's our stories. So I kind of felt that he deserved to be able to tell his, because he's done some pretty cool stuff too. Yes. So that's what we're up to.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Luke, let's just start kind of at the beginning, where you grew up and that kind of stuff, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, born in Illinois, actually, in McHenry, Illinois, and was there until, 98, I want to say. And then my folks moved out to Whitehall, and then that's kind of like where...
Why did you move there?
Well, my grandma and great-grandpa were from Great Falls originally, so how my family kind of ended up in Illinois, I think, was through the military route. Like, my grandma was in Great Falls, born and raised there, and she's Nez Perce Indian, or Nez Perce, as she says. And she met my grandpa at the roller rink at the Civic Center in Great Falls. Civic Center's
cool.
Still there. Yeah, and they hit it off from there, and then he was getting moved from Maelstrom to somewhere else, and proposed, and she said yes. So she ended up following him, and his mom was in northern Illinois, and so they went there for a minute, and then he got stationed in Bermuda.
Oh.
So then they went to Bermuda, and that's where my oldest uncle was born, in Bermuda.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so then they moved back to Illinois to be close to his family, and I don't think they planned on being there that long, and then they ended up raising their kids there, and then came back out to Montana. They had land in Montana for a long time. My great-grandparents were still here, so they ended up coming back in like the early 90s. And then my dad had been trying to get here ever since he was a kid, so the opportunity came up in the late 90s. And
so how old were you when you guys got here?
Oh, 12 or 13, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, went up in Whitehall, and then, yeah.
Junior high school age,
yeah,
pretty much?
Yeah. Junior high, yeah. So
in Whitehall.
In Whitehall, yeah. Graduated junior high in Whitehall there, and then graduated high school there, too.
And did you do sports and stuff in high school?
Yep, yeah, I did sports, football, basketball, and track, and soccer, kind of back and forth. And then I had to work, so I ended up hanging up the tennis shoes, the basketball shoes, and ended up working for A&W for most of my high school career. So like 3 years at A&W. All
your friends from school probably cycled through there while you were working.
Oh, yeah, well, a lot of them worked there, too, because it's like the only game in town, and the owners were really nice and really supportive, so it was a good spot to be.
Cool. Were any of your teams like championship teams or anything like that?
No, yeah, man. All the sports teams that I
pretty
was
small town.
Really small, yeah. 200 kids in the whole high school when I was there.
Many?
200 in the whole high school. My class had started off at like 50, but the mine it was kind of a mine town. So Golden Sunlight Mine, which is still there, but I don't know how much it's operating. But it was kind of the heartblood of the community when I was there, and it was shutting down, so a bunch of my friends were moving away and their families. And
it probably became a mining town about the time of Butte and many other places, I assume.
I bet, yeah.
Probably.
Golden Sunlight seemed a little newer as Gold Mine, but yeah, probably not too long after that, And I think originally Whitehall was more of like an ag town, and they would supply the Butte miners, like that Butte community, with a lot of the like milk and meat and eggs and all that good stuff too.
Huh. That's cool.
At least that's what I was told. So
yeah. So then, when you graduated from high school, what was the plan then?
When I graduated high school, I kind of thought about going college route. My high school counselor didn't recommend it, and I don't blame her. I wasn't really showing any promise in the scholastic world. So I ended up taking a year off, and a friend of the family was one of the managers of Conway Trucking, so in Butte. So he offered me a position, and originally the position he offered me was going to be kind of a training position where they'd start me off on the docks and then got me forklift certified and then get me a CDL and kind of start doing some of the trucking stuff, and it would be a good way to make some good money in a short period of time.
Yeah.
I wanted to go the Forest Service route, but back then it was really hard to get in the Forest Service.
So was there a ranger station near Whitehall or in it, or
In Whitehall, yeah.
there was?
So it's still split then.
And what forest is that?
It's on the Beaverhead Deer Lodge, so BBRD.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was it was still split, but at the time it felt like more people were working in Whitehall. It was Butte Jefferson was the ranger district, and the bulk of the fire crew I think still is in Whitehall. And back then there was an engine in Butte. Now I want to say actually my first year out of high school when I was trying to work for the Forest Service, Boulder, Montana had one of the engines. So there's 3 engines in the whole district. So there's one in Whitehall, one in Boulder at a work center, and then one in Butte. So it was kind of cool, like this triangle of fire suppression.
Yeah, yeah. So when did you start doing Forest Service stuff then? After that first year?
No, it took a while. So I graduated in 2004,
Okay.
and then doing a lot of odd and ends construction things, and I kind of had been doing that since I was pretty young. My uncle had his own construction company in Belgrade.
Oh, okay.
So when I was real young in like junior high, I'd work for him whenever I had the opportunity, and then in high school a little bit, and then odd jobs once in a while. So I had a little bit of background on that. I did some house moving, and then none of it was real reliable, and a lot of construction folks don't like students because it's short season.
Did any of your relatives do Forest Service stuff?
No,
Not really.
So to my surprise, I was the first. My great grandpa worked for the county there in Great Falls. So I guess that's the closest thing I have. You know.
Yeah.
And, it's the only thing I can think of. So, but my family was kind of always outdoorsmen. So like my dad, especially real big outdoorsman, and then on my mom's side too, all those folks too. My great grandpa had his own like boys club because he missed both wars around his age. Like he like too young for World War II or too old. I can't remember how the age worked out, but I don't think he ever served, or maybe he had some kind of health thing. But what he ended up doing was starting the boys club for a lot of the kids who lost their dad overseas, just or their dad was just gone for a big majority of the war. So he started this boys club to teach young men skills.
Cool.
And
that's cool.
yeah, it was really cool. It was a big camp there just north of Chicago. So
Yeah. Did your family do a lot of camping and stuff like that?
Yep. Yeah.
Growing up?
Yep. Totally.
And hunting too?
Yep. And hunting. Yeah. And especially my dad and all his friends and stuff. So
cool.
Yeah, I grew up with a little bit of that background, and then I was getting into hunting, but fire just kind of takes you over.
Yeah. Yeah. So your first season then was when?
First season was 2008.
Okay, 2008.
Yep, in Whitehall there. I was on the soup crew, which was the IA mod, but they called it suppression crew back then.
Yep.
Yeah,
so that's where you did your first training and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Guard school and all.
Yeah, they send you off to like a central spot for the for the whole forest. You go to Birch Creek was the place, just north of Dillon on I-15, and beautiful spot. It was kind of cool because then you got to meet like your whole like forest rookie class. So,
that's
from
cool.
all the districts. Yeah, so you got to build this relationship right away, and
yeah, that's neat. Yeah, and so then that first season after you finished guard school and stuff, you were a fire crew member.
Yeah, just on the IEMA. But the way that Whitehall cycled through, which I think a lot of districts do, is just kind of whatever's available, and especially once days off. So, pretty sure everyone's spend some time on the engine. Because originally I was bummed because I wanted to be on the engine. It just felt like you're doing more, firefighter type work with an engine.
Right. Yeah, we used to kind of do that too in the old days at Sula. The fire crew would help all the other functions if there was nothing really going on fire-wise.
Yeah.
We do PT and all that, but some days we might help the range people, or whatever functions.
Yeah, when I first started, we were like the just labor for everybody, which was like you were just saying, it was really cool. We got to help improve some of the Continental Divide Trail. And there was some volunteer cycling group that was trying to add some other trail to it, and they got the approval, so we went up and helped create a new trail up on the pass there, going over Homestake. It was really cool.
The fire crews quite often, had more folks than a lot of the other functions too. So they would tap you guys, and they would tap us. It's just a traditional thing that the crew would fill in if they didn't have fire things to do. They could help the other groups do other functions, do whatever they needed, and to everybody's advantage and stuff.
Yeah.
So when did you go on your first fire? That season or?
That season, yeah, it was really slow. I don't know if you remember, 2008 was real slow, and but I didn't know any different. So, just doing all the project work and, you're just waiting, like you're chomping the bit for that
Yep.
first fire. And the first fire, I want to say, I'm trying to think if I was even on, oh no, I was on a small one up in the Big Hole, somewhere between Wisdom and Wise River was my
Okay.
first one. And no clue what was going on, fresh out of guard school. And it's funny for the people who've been listening. A lot have heard the name Bronson a lot because he's one of my great buddies. He's actually my older brother's best friend, but by association, he ends up being one of my great buddies too. But him and my older brother, thick as thieves since high school and grade school almost. So
Yeah.
anyways, pop on this fire. He's in fighting fire at a Wise River, so he's there and running him right away. So it's like really cool. Meet one of my pretty much another brother of mine.
Right.
And then one of my really good buddies is the soup crew foreman. So so that worked out cool because I got to be working for one of my really good buddies and
Yeah.
and
They probably, just like most of the districts back, when we all started, there were folks that had probably been on the crew for quite a while.
yeah, a lot of experience. And then being the force felt smaller back then, so there's some folks that I became really good buddies with in guard school I hadn't seen since then. And then when we tied in, at the top, I was like, oh man, like Chris or Jake or whoever,
Yeah.
oh man, I haven't seen you since guard school. How you been? So those fires are enforced. It ends up being more like a reunion kind of party fire. Like you're
They
like,
were
oh
always
man,
they were always cool when the folks from the other districts would be involved,
yeah,
either to come to your district or you go to theirs or whatever.
yeah, totally. Yeah, some of the games you kind of end up playing along the way with during mop up and stuff is pretty cool.
So, did you guys do any burning piles or anything like that?
I don't think the only burning I got that year was on the next fire I got on. And man, I really don't remember any small fires that year. Like we just didn't get the lightning and it seemed like a wetter year.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't remember any of it. And all the burning was done before I got on being a student. And then the burning, the pile burning was after I left because I think I left at the end of, or beginning of September. Because I was going to school at MCB and the school then, and probably still does, always starts right after Labor Day weekend.
Okay.
And so I'd work through Labor Day weekend and get that last holiday pay and then leave. But then, so the first time I got to fire, any kind of firing operations was on a decent sized fire just outside of Whitehall. And during our Frontier Days celebration that Whitehall has every year at the end of July, I think.
Okay.
Let's say around the 25th or 27th. And it's, big. That's kind of a reunion itself because it's the big to do and all the friends from other towns show up and there's a street dance. They shut down the street and it's just
fun stuff.
Yeah, live music. So they have a parade that morning, and I'm Smokey because I'm the new guy, and we went out pretty hard and has celebrated the night before and kind of a sacrifice to Big Ernie. And so I'm definitely feeling the pain of the night before, and it's a super hot end of July. I'm in Smokey and. That for some reason usually they have Smokey walk, but I was right on top of the engine, and which it was all those chrome bins are just radiating more heat up at me, and even the kids are feeling bad for me, like Smokey, are you all right? And I'm you can't say anything, but I was just waving and nodding, yeah, but they're all giving me popsicles and water. Even little kids really felt bad for me, and then. We go to turn around because Whitehall's so small that you do 2 laps. You go down one way and back the other, to extend the parade.
That's cool.
And as we're turning around to go back, kind of west, I guess, there's a good-sized plume in the distance. And unfamiliar to me because I'd never seen that before in my life at that point. And
yeah.
But I could recognize it, so I was like, oh, wow. And I was like, oh, wow, I know what that is, And so we cruised back to the district office, which is right there, the cache where they store the engine, put Smokey away. They started feeding me Gatorades and waters to try to rehydrate me, to get on the fire line. And we ended up getting on a decent-sized fire. It's huge to me being a young fella.
So you guys rolled out to it then?
Yeah, it started off as a Type 4, and I think it was a Type 3 for maybe a couple shifts, so it got that big, and I think that's some aviation on it. And Gallatin Repeller showed up, and the Gallatin Repellers were the coolest people on the planet that I'd ever met at that point in my life. They all had aviators. They had a little boombox, and they were just awesome. They're just the coolest people ever. So I was like, I want to be them someday.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think of all that?
Oh yeah, it's so overwhelming at first. It was a lot. in the movies, you could put out a giant flame front with just like a Type 6 300-gallon engine. So I'm trying to do that, and I'm just wearing myself out, just, trying to stay ahead of everything and trying to put out fire, and I'm just, getting hooked and trying to stay ahead of it and just, getting myself in a bad way, and I'm starting to get way overheated, so I'm starting to overexert myself. But it ended up being really cool because then they sat me down in the shade for a minute after, like, we got some reinforcements and after we kind of lost that battle, and it raced up the hill on us, but it was going to tie into a rock band, so it wasn't like the end of the world.
Did you guys camp out on the fire?
Not that night, so we were still trying to reorganize, and I think that was man-caused, but I think there was like weather or something because they weren't sure if they're going to hold the local resources for IA.
Mm-hmm.
I think is why we ended up going back to town, and we weren't very far from town. And but at the end of that shift, I want to say it was that night, or maybe it was the next shift, we ended up doing some burning, and I was so pumped to use a fusee. And as soon as I, crack that thing off, that is the worst smell on the planet almost.
Yeah.
The smell coming off a fusee.
Yeah, the fumes are
so
awful.
Pungent. Yeah, it gets deep in your nostrils.
Burn your nose and your lungs and stuff.
Oh, and it stayed. And you could even and even when I got older, it was like, light it away from me. Like,
right.
It still gets you because it's so pungent.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about the first shift, though, is the night after the parade is the big street dance, like the big event. That's the big night for Frontier Days. So we're not really thinking about it, and you can kind of see town from the ridge we're up at, and we're like, oh, that's cool. And then we get the word we're going back. So, being a younger guy on the fire, you're not making plans. You just go where they tell you.
Yeah.
So they tell us we're going back. I'm like, oh, cool. So we get back just in time for like the last
catch part of it.
Yeah, the last 20 minutes of the event, of the street dance. So we're
that's cool.
Yeah, we got the thumbs up to run down our Nomex. So we just t-shirt, dirty, straight from the fire. And we run down our boots and greens and, just to get the last few dances. And so it was super cool of leadership to let us go do that because it's a big event, you're looking forward to it all year.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And,
that's cool.
Yeah. And the fire, you can see the fire really good from town. It's still up there glowing. So everyone's kind of impressed, like, oh man, were you guys on that? Like, yeah, no big deal,
Oh, that's funny.
They're like, wait, why aren't you still on it? Like, well, it's fine for now. We'll get back after it in the morning,
Yeah. Did any folks stay out there on it? Probably.
I want to say they did. Maybe the Butte folks stayed on it that night or something. I don't remember anyone really sticking it out, but
yeah.
Or maybe the Helitac did or the repellers because we only had them loaned out for one shift, so
gotcha.
They might stay the night and then went back.
Gotcha.
So there must have been some kind of threat. Back then I was so oblivious to anything else going on. It was just like what was in front of me, and that was that fire. And lucky for that fire because, as a GS3, you're not making a ton of money and that was just base 8s at that point, So
Right.
Pretty happy to get the overtime on that one.
I know. Overtime was just the coolest thing.
It is, yeah. and being a local fire, not having like a team on, and then one of the guys ended up being one of my really good friends, Aaron Hoff, took it over, and he was the IC4 on it. And so we got to kind of do some stuff because we were a little thinner, being just the district holding it.
Yeah.
I got to help out with some bucket drops and kind of learn how that goes and using the panel. And my friend Mitch was the one who was running the air ops on that, but he let me jump in and train me up a little bit. So
cool.
Just a big opportunity especially for first year.
Yeah, that's great. Got to do a bunch of stuff, to start off just because of the way it was with your friends being overhead and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's really cool. And just having good people that are like, know it's important to take this opportunity to train when you got the opportunity,
Yeah, for sure. So did you have any other fires that season or that was just...
Yeah, so one more fire. It was actually called the Whetstone, up somewhere in Peaburg, so probably something Whetstone Mountain or something, and it's kind of more on our side, and
probably relatives of the Whetstones from our East Fork country.
That's exactly what I was thinking, So I'm wondering if it's not too far, like if you took the East Fork and just kept going towards Peaburg, I wonder if you run into where I was.
Yeah.
Because those days I totally oblivious, but that was one of the cooler fires I was on because it was in like a wet area too, but it was put up enough smoke to get some public concern.
Yeah.
So they hiked us in on it, and also just really low overtime for the whole season. Like not a good moneymaker for anybody, and it's like the last hurrah for the students. So it's super cool if whoever was running the B-Bar-D at that point put priority for the students to go on this fire. So like it was just like a heavy student crew. So that was really cool. So
Yeah,
we got
that
to
is
all
cool.
go and get the last little dip of overtime. And
Cool.
but I ended up going TU on that fire, tits up on that fire because of my Crohn's. So like that's when I first started battling Crohn's disease, and I ended up like the first couple shifts were amazing, and then it just spiraled
Yeah.
down real fast, and I almost had to get evac'd off the fire. And
Huh.
yeah, one of my good buddies ended up hiking me out, and the Butte engine actually was out patrolling. They came pick me up, and my friend Brendan Mullen, who recently retired, he picked me up and said some good words of encouragement because I was feeling low, having to leave a fire before it was done.
Yeah, yeah. So then, did you go back the next season there, or?
Yeah, I ended up going at that point. I didn't really know what I was going to do because I had no idea what was going on with me, with
Right.
my system. So, but like a month later, I had to have emergency surgery, maybe a little more than a month, but on my intestines because of the Crohn's. I think I ended up saying like 4 narrowings and like a bunch of fistulas, and they ended up having to remove 2 feet of intestine. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, I had like 36 or something staples, 37 staples in my abdomen. And
Wow.
yeah, when I went under, it made it sound like it was going to be an appendix. They're like, you make up maybe like an incision like that, And I was like, oh, all right, whatever. I didn't really care about the incision size. I woke up and then, my whole abdomen is, stapled back together. I was like, what in the world happened?
What was going on?
Yeah.
Wow.
And my surgeon, her name was Catherine Hatch. She was awesome, man. She really saved my bacon because it was so severe and she didn't expect it. So I think she like had like an hour for surgery time, and it ended up being like a 4-hour surgery.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then hearing not from her but from
Where
other folks.
did you go for that surgery?
In Billings.
To Billings.
Yeah, and I ended up driving myself, and my roommate, who's one of my best buddies, like, dude, why don't you tell me? I was like, I didn't know I was in this bad shape. I just felt bad, so I went to the ER, and
Yeah.
I hadn't eaten in weeks at that point because I couldn't. So, and woke up, and I guess when they put me under, my dad had been like, hey, you should see if they let me come in and watch, I was like, oh, sure, and they're like, no, I can't do that. And but she's like, I'd take some pictures for you. It's like, yeah, please do, So I don't remember having this conversation, but So when I woke up, she had some pictures for me of my intestine, and like,
Oh jeez.
yeah, it was cool. And she sent me the photos, and I don't know if I still have them. I think I might have lost them somewhere, but
That's different.
it was, yeah. But I've been feeling so bad for so long, I didn't know what it felt like to be feeling good. And I'm running track at this point for MSUB.
Okay.
And so this is in my second year of track, and my first year was kind of rough because of my guts, but I had no idea what was going on. And so then second year I got on some better medication and get get all that bad intestine out of me and get healed up, and I put on like a ton of weight, and I started competing better in track too. Like I got a little faster. My sprint times went down. My long jump went up.
What did you run in track, or what did you do?
For indoor track, I did because it's a little different. They don't have the 100-meter dash in indoor, so it's a 60-meter dash.
Okay.
So I did the 60-meter dash. I did the 200. Once in a while, I got roped in the long relay, but that was only if they really were desperate because I was real slow on a 400. I could barely make it. And,
Yeah.
And then long jump was like my main event. Was the one I was the best at, I guess. But
Cool.
yeah, so I did that, and that's part of the reason why I went to track was more for the long jump, and then we were just low on sprinters, so I started doing that too.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so then more fire stuff.
Yeah, so I go back for my second season, really slow again. 2009. I think that was a real wet year in 2009. A lot of project work. Got to do some more
I think
birding.
we had a pretty fair amount of rain over here.
Really?
That year also, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't remember. I'm just thinking I left my little Smokies at the office. I should have reviewed my Smokies before we did this, but I don't remember doing much. I think I got my first big assignment down to Region 3, and I want to say Houston. No, not Houston. Some little town near Roswell in New Mexico. Yeah, and I just got my B, and so I was really pumped to go cut on fire.
So that was a crew assignment that you went on?
Yeah. 20-man crew assignment, type 2, and so they have us swamping some dozer line, and I'm pumped. But I have no idea how gnarly the brush is there. Like everything's got, something that'll stab you or stick you.
Oh yeah.
So I'm fighting thorns, and it's hot. 110, like I said, and I can't believe I'm not catching fire. Like sawing,
Yeah.
all your PPE. I was just drenched.
Yeah.
But it was a cool experience, Like, I don't think I could survive that now, but being in it then, you're just, everything's awesome,
It's pretty amazing when you first get to go to another state, or especially a state that's far away from home, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see what those folks do down there. And
Totally, yeah.
yeah.
And somehow, I don't know if we got redirected or what happened, because like I was just riding the truck, but I think maybe we were just going on severity, and then all of a sudden that Hondo, New Mexico, I think is where it was, but that fire popped, and they just like needed bodies, and they ended up sending this cabin like at our canyon at like the head of the fire, and it was mostly just like kind of mobile homes and livestock, so we were just going through and cutting fences and ringing houses and just hoping, by ringing I mean like putting a ring of fire around the house, and
Oh, gotcha.
and you didn't have anything to do. I mean, like some of the stuff if we could throw like some wood away from the house or some brush, we were doing that. But I mean,
If
it
you
was
had
like
time, yeah.
hadn't time, because we knew like we could see it coming, and mostly we were worried about the livestock. So we got a bunch of the horses out, and just a lot of the ranchers were already ahead of us doing that. But whatever they missed,
Just let them loose.
yeah, just let them loose, and they
Yeah.
ripped down the road and get ahead of it, and that was pretty gnarly. Like
It's kind of exciting.
yeah, we had the whole big flame front come by us, and we were like in a ditch, and one of the other squads had to drive through it. It was pretty gnarly.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they had camp at the school there, and so we were a little ways, I'm thinking south of town, and it had hit the highway and then headed north towards the school where camp was. And as we're like setting up, you can see this big flame front come like cruising by, like not really ripping, but like not
Moving.
something you want, moving, like
Yeah.
not something you want to be in front of. And I'm like, and no one seems to care. And like, my second year, I don't know that we're in a good spot. I'm just like,
So, what about that?
yeah, I'm like it's right there, And then the next battle was snakes, lots of snakes. So like they're like, you gotta set up a tent, and I don't like tents, so I was like, I'm not setting up a tent. I didn't set up a tent, but luckily I didn't wake up with the snake.
Yeah, really. Yeah, there's a lot of them down that country for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of times the problem with that, right, is they get cold at night, and then you're a heat source, so that's why they crawl in the sleeping bag with you, right?
Yep.
Ugh.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, never got the pleasure, thank God.
Well, that sounds like it was an interesting fire.
Yeah, it
For
was.
sure.
It was really cool.
Crew assignment.
Yeah, a lot of young folks on it, and a lot of my friends in the overhead positions. So, and I mean, that was when I got introduced to stupid flips and just a bunch of other, fun crew stuff that were happening, and just like, like when you're on a crew with a
Did you
bunch of people.
stay in a camp, or did they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we stayed in camp the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And stupid flip where a guy won the PPE flip to wear his PPE to dinner, full PPE. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's always interesting your first times, in those camps, seeing how things work, and I don't know, catering services, or sometimes they just had small scale food service type stuff,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, because there was a smaller fire, so I don't remember it being like a really big full on camp. And I think there were like a small little shower trailer, and I want to say it was almost like a local food service, because the food was really good.
Yeah.
And so that was awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, stupid flipper every day because it's pretty slow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then what?
I know. And then by the end of that, it was just a goofball kind of fire center. Just a bunch of like good, funny people. Like everyone on that crew had a great sense of humor, and so we ended up just having to seat a bunch of Dozer line for the last couple days. And so like someone would be following in a truck, holding all the seeds, and blasting some goofy music while the rest of us are out there spreading seed around.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was that, and then I'm trying to remember. Go back home, and I'm trying to remember kind of what happened after that, fire-wise. I don't know. Lived in the bunkhouse with a bunch of good folks at that point too, and so that was a really good time. And started hanging out with like the Big Hole folks a little more, like especially in the beginning of the year. We all like met up at the Jackson Hot Springs, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, so that was a really good time, and kind of crew bonding with the Big Hole folks.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm trying to remember fire-wise. Oh, we ended up, yeah. I think I'm blending 2 years, because I think this was like
That's okay.
2010. Maybe that fire was 2010 as well. I mean, I'm trying to remember.
10 was slow over here. 9 and 10 both were slow over here.
Yeah.
In West Fork, I don't think we had very many fires that year, and I know a few of them we were on, we got rained out, basically.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, I think you guys better come out now, or you're not going to be able to, And one of them, they were able to fly the copter in and get there were only 4 of us on this one fire, and they were able to fly us out. But
Oh,
if it
gotcha.
had been any later, they wouldn't have been able to fly because it became totally overcast, and we would have probably had to do a 10-mile hike toward Lost Trail Pass to get out of there.
Yeah.
But,
Dang, man. Yeah, I'm trying to remember because I ended up going to the Gila at like 2009 or 2008. I want to say maybe the Gila was my second year.
down to the Gila Forest.
Yeah, in Silver
Yeah.
City, New Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel
Silver's cool.
it is really cool.
I
Yeah.
always liked it.
Yeah, and like we got to see we started patrolling, like the second week we were in, and we got to see the like cave dwellings,
Yeah.
or cliff dwellings.
Cliff dwellings, yeah.
Yeah, and there's like a plaque to Geronimo at one of the spots, so good to stop and check that out. And yeah, the Gila country is super cool. I want to say that was actually so. The one story I just talked about being Hondo, that was my third year. I'm pretty positive. So that was in 2010. So the Gila was 2009.
Silver was cool too as a town. I mean, it had a lot of neat little like art shops and cool T-shirt stores, and
Yeah.
like turquoise jewelry and all kinds of stuff like that. It was I liked it there.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I love the artwork and the feel, and it had a different feel to it. I remember do you remember the little brewery that was there? I don't know if it still is.
I think so.
Yeah, it was kind of like a good hang for a lot of Forest Service folks. And
Yeah.
that was when I met like my first smoke jumper, and I was just like, oh man. And one of my friends, who was the engine boss for us, Zach Phillips, was buddies with this guy. They'd been on Lewis and Clark shots together, I think, or something. So I was like, dude, that's so cool. A jumper. He's like, yeah, it's not a big deal for him. He was a hot shot for a long time. Like, but for me, I was like, dang. But then after that, then this random dude comes over and starts talking to us, and he ends up being some kind of like scientist or some kind of researcher, something with a PhD.
Huh.
And I can't remember exactly what his title was, but he picks up a plate from the table that we're sitting at, and he's like, definitely didn't find any of these out here or in Antarctica. And I was like, what?
So this guy had been all over the place?
Yeah, and he was
Yeah?
like researching UFOs, and he was trying to say it without saying it.
Oh.
And he's like, but that's about all I can say about this. That's why these guys are here. And sure enough, he had like 2 Secret Service looking people that were like in suits next to him.
Really?
Yeah, this is my first time to Silver City, and I'm like, is this guy off his marbles or like? But these guys look legit. And then they ended up escorting him out like not long after because I think he was starting to get a little too loose-lipped. And I was like, I don't know what just happened there, but that was strange.
That is strange.
Yeah, it was like you already hear the stories about UFOs and Gila monsters and stuff, and then this guy pops out of nowhere. So
That's wild.
yeah, I'm almost positive that was in 2009. So that was a good trip.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty good time down there.
So then how long was it before you decided that you wanted to try and jump? Or what did you do in between? Anything, fire-wise
That stood out.
before you jumped?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess one thing I was gonna say about my first year that I forgot to add was
Yeah.
It was kind of cool because I got to be part of a tradition that I didn't know existed because it wasn't like it just wasn't a big deal, and it wouldn't be a big deal if you weren't really in fire. So I want to say I'll put it this way: the last existing lookout structure that I know of on the B-Bar-D is Red Mountain Lookout, right outside of Butte, and so at the end of the season, I don't think they still do it, but at the end of the season, usually the last day the students are on, we do a PT hike up to Red Mountain Lookout, and it's just this awesome view.
What was the name of it?
Red Mountain.
Red Mountain. Okay.
They call it something else now. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but like it's usually in parentheses, like Red Mountain and Red Mountain. I know I'm
So
saying
you
it kinda
guys
fast.
hiked up to it?
Hiked up to it, and like tradition was like hike up, do like our AAR for the season,
Oh, cool.
and talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, what we'd like to maybe do next year, and
Yeah.
those kind of things. And so it was super cool. And then
Was that the first lookout you'd been to ever?
Yeah, that's why I brought
What
it
kind
up.
of a lookout was it? Was it an L4 or a flat top or something different that you remember?
Ah, man, I'm having a hard time remembering. It was definitely either an L4 or R6 is a flat top.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
That'd be like Willow.
Yeah, I want to say it's more like Willow, but I think it's old, so maybe it's an L4. But it had a foundation, so it's probably an R6,
Could have been.
right? Yeah, 'cause
Probably
it wasn't
was,
on stilts. Like, there was another one my rookie year that was called Jack Mountain Lookout. It's kind of between, I think like Basin. It's between Butte and Boulder, so somewhere in that corridor on I-15, and but that one got removed, and not sure whatever.
When you
happened.
guys hiked up to that one for your AAR, was it closed? Was anybody still up there staffing it, or?
Yeah, it was closed, but at the time, they would allow the fire folks to use it. Like if an injured firefighter, like one of my friends,
Okay.
he hit a bad back, so he spent some time up in there, and he had some gnarly storm stories from being up in there.
Huh.
So, but that was about it. And years before, not too long before that, I guess they were staffing it full time, and it overlooked Butte and Whitehall, so it was kind of overlooking some pretty populated areas. But I mean, it looked down. I'm trying to think of a good way to describe it. It looked down like towards like Melrose too, so like down I-15 that way.
Huh.
So yeah, I mean, it had a lot of coverage because it's pretty high up. It's in the Highland Mountain Range.
Cool.
Oh, Highland Lookout. That's the other thing it's called too.
Huh.
But I only saw that recently, the Highland Lookout. But I guess there's a couple red mountains, so that's why someone may have changed it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but it was cool. So we had cigars and just, it was a cool kind of last little bonding thing before folks get sent off to the school year, and kind of a good thing to remember.
Review your season, and
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, and then maybe even like talk about the why of things, that maybe you missed during the heat of battle or whatever, So
Yeah.
that was cool.
It was always fun when, in all the districts and stuff, but I'm thinking of West Fork because there were a number of years where a lot of the folks on the crew, the hand crew, would go down to Magdalena and Mag's in Arizona, I think. Yeah, down close to the Mexican border. And so when they'd come back, those that didn't go, we'd have like a big gathering, after we did the fire weather and that kind of stuff. And if they had gone to fires while they were down there, they'd, tell everybody what they did. And, they had some pretty interesting experience, desert fires and stuff like you were talking about.
Hot.
Way different than Montana, or our part of Montana here anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they just give some input on what they did, what maybe they could have done differently, just information sharing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, and it's really good because then if you find yourself down there, you already have a few slideshows, as people say.
Yeah, and I'd throw in a few things. I didn't go on those trips with them, but having been down there quite a bit on the hot shot crew and stuff, I could give them a little perspective on certain aspects of those fires too.
Yeah, you've probably been all over the Southwest, huh?
Yeah, we went a lot.
Yeah, man. It used to be like, especially for R1, we used to go down there all the time. It seems like it's not as much anymore.
Yeah. No, it was cool.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
Yeah, so a few years in district life, it's starting to be that turnover time that we're still kind of experiencing of like people not staying in positions. Because before, I guess when I started, the GS5 perm on the B-Bar-D didn't exist. So a lot of people are just kind of moving on to different careers. So we're losing a lot of experience because there's just not a good ladder, in the fire world, especially in the B-Bar-D at that point.
Yep.
So even me, I was like, had a lot of good time in the fire world, ended up having to take over like pretty much engine boss duties in my third year. I kind of started sliding into that role a little bit. I mean, with some good training and folks, some good direction, and but I earned it, by like getting my IC5 and already, running a few things locally on the district, like so, and like projects and some smaller things, and so I started kind of doing, run the Type 6 engine a little bit, and then by my fourth year, I was responding to fires independently, and but like I said, I just had really good leadership, to good mentors. Like Joe Sampson's a big name in kind of the fire world now. He's for the Beaverhead Deer Lodge, he's the forest FMO, forest management officer. So kind of a big deal these days, And
Josh, you mean?
Joe Sampson.
Oh, Joe. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And we all called him Samps, and I just got so fortunate to have him as a mentor coming up because he was a real kind of hands-off, like knew the right amount of information to give you and the right amount of like almost like leash to give you, like enough that you're not going to get yourself in trouble or anybody else, but enough that you're going to do some problem solving on your own.
Yeah, and you could learn.
Yeah, learn. Yeah, and figure it out.
Yeah.
And then,
but yet they were cool about helping you if you needed.
Yeah,
if you needed a little bit.
Yep, and knowing the right time to come in and give you a little bit if you need it, and then his boss at the time, because he's AFMO detailed, I think my first year, and then his boss Kevin Smith is still the FMO there in Whitehall. And same deal, like just a great boss to have, mentor, like cool. In that way. Yeah, like when when he gave you the opportunity like to run the engine, you knew like you earned it, and he trusted you. And it was totally hands off. He wasn't micromanaging at all. Like as soon as he kind of gave you the keys to the engine, it's like, man, you know you did good, you know, and you're gonna make him proud too because you wanted to, you know. So
Yep.
you go out and do an awesome job.
Those were the best kind of bosses, the ones that mentored you well, but didn't interfere. You know, let you do your job and just offer constructive comments if they needed to, but otherwise, go for it.
Yeah, totally. And in my experience, like for me and everybody else who kind of came up with me around the same time or even a little before me, because I was getting observant too around my third and third year of like, what's people doing, what's working, how do I want to be a leader, you know. And luckily I had, you know, people like Joe Sampson and Kevin Smith to
good role models.
Yeah, to role model, and take a lot of notes from. And
yep.
So yeah, like I mean, I think most of us went above and beyond expectations when we finally did get the reins to, you know, go icy our own fire and run the engine and the crew, you know.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. Good times.
Yeah.
And then, so, you know, did that my fourth year, and actually Kevin Smith, Schmitty, I was having a battle because I was like, man, I think it's time to go shot. A lot of people had been in as long as me, and I just gotten my firefighter type 1 or squad boss and my IC5, and this was my fourth season, at the end of my fourth season, and I was like, Schmitty, I don't know, man, like, what's a good move here, you know, honestly, like, I'm not, totally not sure what I want to do with myself. I'm looking for some guidance, and me and him were out on a project, just me and him doing something, and he's like, you know what, Barrett, like, you just got your quals, right? I was like, yeah, just this year, you know. And he's like, all right, two things I give you. He's like, it's your decision, do what you want, you know. Hot shotting's good experience. You're gonna get a lot of fire out of it and learn a lot, and it's cool crew life. But you just got your quals. You're finally, like, you know, got your own qualifications underneath you and starting to get some engine time. And so he's like, I could use you. And why don't you take a year, just enjoy having some qualifications and get to use your squad boss, your Fall RB, and your IC5, and start working on some engine stuff for me. And he's like, and career-wise, I think you'll probably get a little more out of that because you'll get, you know, you'll start your engine boss task book and start getting some signatures that way. So
right.
He's like, that's how I look at it. But if you want to go hot shot, totally support that too. And, you know, I'll recommend some spots for you. Like I think he like said like Helena and Bitterroot and pretty much all the R1s like Flathead and Lewis and Clark. And
yeah,
we had thrown quite a few folks from Whitehall to Lewis and Clark, so had a good relationship there. And he's like, I support you either way, but that's my 2 cents. And it's just awesome, you know, like didn't tell me any more than I needed, didn't tell me any less, like just perfect.
You kind of got to make a choice. So what'd you do?
Yeah, so I came back, and then I got more opportunity because we lost our 6, so our 6 moved on to somewhere else, or maybe took the 7 in Butte, I can't remember, but so we had a void there, so I ended up, as a temp 5, I ended up filling in as a 6, and not officially,
right,
but doing all the type 6 duties
of his work.
Yeah, or GS6, not type 6, doing all the GS6 duties, and super cool, you know, got to learn that side of things and got to work on my leadership a little bit more too that way, you know, because I was in charge of folks now, and it was really cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, and so, and then I got to farm it, and it was so cool because I got to farm myself out a lot more then at that point too. Like I got to go out to Helitech, and Schmitty was awesome. I mean, like we had 2 big fires in our district, but they were rat holing us because the local fire resources always get stuck on IA because you know the area. So I mean, it kind of makes sense. But then
they don't want to lose everybody.
Yeah, but you get short on hours, you know, and they wouldn't let anyone farm us out to the fire, you know, and be IA ready. So we were just stuck at like 10s or something. Well, all the other visiting resources around the fires. So Helitech were going to Colorado, and they needed a HECM, and I was a trainee, so he let me go with them.
Cool.
Yeah, and we're starting, you know, fire season Region 1 is really starting to go, and then Great Northern calls, and he needs a squad boss, and back to my buddy Bronson is the other squad boss, and the squad boss that I filled in for was going back to school, and a big chunk of the students on the Great Northern, so they had to bring in a bunch of new folks, and I ended up being able to jump on as a squad boss for Great Northern.
Who was the crew leader then?
So how the org chart was then, I think, was Margarita Phillips was like the kind of the soup, and man, she was awesome. Just tough.
Did you come to West Fork ever with them?
No, I think that was a year before. Oh no, that was the same year, but that was before I got on.
Margarita brought Great Northern to West Fork one of those years.
Yeah.
During 12 11, 12, and 13, those years, 2011, 12, and 13, West Fork was like crazy. We had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
It might have been 2012 that Margarita brought Graydon. Actually, I think it was 2013 during the Gold Pan fire.
Oh, it was after me because yeah,
Yeah, they came, and I'd known her for a long time.
Yeah. Was 2012 the Roaring Lion?
No, Roaring Lion was 16,
Oh, was that recent?
2016. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I thought there was a decent fire in the Bitterroot in 2012 because the Great Northern was.
No, there were fires. We were pretty much absorbed in our own world out at West Fork because we had our whole southern boundary, the Mustang fire. On the Salmon Chalice was going, and then there were some Nez fires on the further downriver,
Yeah.
part of West Fork that abuts the Salmon River. So I mean, the whole boundary burned. So we just had tons of stuff going on.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I wonder because like there was a pretty good plume coming from the Bitterroot, and we were at the AFD at that point. It was just easier than going all up to Condon, so we just leave the buggies and all the gear there. They had a Connex box there for the Great Northern, and leave all the stuff there and be fire ready. And most folks lived in Missoula, so it just was easier.
Yeah.
So when we were packing up and going available that day, you could see the big column coming up from the Bitterroot. Like, that's, I guess, where we're going. Then we end up in Miles City. So, like, going the opposite direction.
You never know.
Yeah, totally. It's so wild. And that was really cool because that was the first fire that I'd ever been on. I was telling you earlier about going up to Roundup and Flagstaff. And I guess to tell folks who aren't familiar with Great Northern, I guess, Type 2 IA crew, kind of run like a training crew for a shot crew. Like,
Yeah.
it runs exactly like a shot crew, but just like with newer folks, like
Yep.
less experience.
Yep.
But same exact like organization and routines and everything else, and buggies. So I think they're brand new buggies at that point, and so I was telling Rene earlier, like, we're really proud of them. Like, that's cool. Look at these sweet buggies, but they're the little ones, you know.
Yeah.
And then Flagstaff shows up. They're brand new buggies, and they're huge,
Big
and
ones.
beautiful, and they look like they're jacked up, you know, because ours was like 2-wheel drive, so ours are little suckers, you know.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, like Flagstaff shows
Gulp.
up. Yeah, and they all just like, badass, firefighters and all this little Type 2, like, oh man, those guys are cooler than us. And but that was a really cool fire because they were really cool. Like, got to work with them a little bit, and then we were out somewhere, like I said, outside of Roundup, and this we were like scouting out this piece of line, and then my buddy Bronson and Mike King was actually running the crew then. So
Okay.
I guess go back to that question. So Mike King was still in the Bitterroot Hot Shots.
Yep.
But he detailed as the soup of Great Northern. So Margarita was still with us, but she wasn't really in part of the crew. She was there, but I think she's more hanging out for single resource stuff.
Okay.
So she was helping out a little bit, but not really so much involved with the crew. And then Carrie, I'm blanking on Carrie's last name, but she was also a jumper for a little while, and she was like the assistant.
Okay.
So Carrie and Mike were kind of more on the crew, more Mike, and Mike King. And so Mike King and Bronson come and snag me and like, hey man, we're gonna scout out this piece of line, come check it out, and we got to tie in with this homeowner and make sure it's cool because it's on private.
Right.
So we go through this gate and I'm just like, it's all that kind of deserty country out that way.
Yep.
And come to find out it's dinosaur country because like we turned this corner and this giant dinosaur bone just
Really?
on the ranch. Yeah, like huge.
That's cool.
And I was like, is that what I think it is? And they had just seen it, so they came and grabbed me. So like, yeah, check this out. But they were being like, silent about it. They're real quiet about it. And I was like, oh wow. And there's a bunch of these little balls underneath it. And I was like, what is that? And Bronson like leans down, acts like he's taking a bite out of it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. So like we're, and so that ends up being the mystery of like all of us figuring out like what those were, and I think someone said eggs, and we're like, maybe. And then I want to see Mike King took a picture and took the picture into Bozeman and I think to the museum there and was like, hey, what do you think this is? And they're like perfectly round. He's like, I would say they're probably dinosaur eggs. And I was like, wow, that's cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. So and there's like a pile of them right there. So,
Wow.
yeah, that's kind of cool. And then, I think then we ended up going more east towards like, is it Alzada or Ekalaka or something like that way?
Huh.
I'm trying to remember what little town, but on a coal seam fire. And then during our in briefing, they were telling us like what to look for coal seams. And the week before, there was an engine crew that got messed up from trying to mop up a coal seam because they didn't know. So they were like
They get burned.
They didn't get too burned. I think they had a couple like minor things on their feet and their calves, but like mostly just the inhalation from the coal seam,
the fumes and stuff. Yeah.
But they're like in the coal seam, just like mopping it up, and it was a bad deal. They could have got really hurt, so they're kind of lucky, I guess.
Wow, I guess, yeah.
But yeah, we're patrolling this piece of line, and it's pretty well dead fire at this point. But they give us heads up they already found the one coal seam, and then they're like, here's a procedure, like GPS it, call somebody in, get people out of the area. And so I got my crew kind of gridding off the dozer line in the green, and I just kind of noticed that the ground looks a little different in this one spot. But it looked but I was looking farther out. I'm like, I'm kind of curious, like what that is. Kind of some of the details of what they were saying about a coal seam. Like the sloughing and the unevenness of the ground.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of walking through, and then one of our friends, Liz Straley from Libby Troy area, she was like closest to me in the grid, and I'm like looking around. I'm like, hey Liz, can you hold him up real quick? And Liz holds him up, and I was like, man, like this. Something looks a little weird. I'm getting
looks strange. Getting
a weird whiff every once in a while. Something I haven't smelled before. I'm like, man, something. I don't like this. So I look down, and the ground's looking weird. Like it's moving a little bit. Not like a lot. It's just moving a little bit. I'm like, well, that's weird. So I stick my Pulaski and I kind of stir it, and it just boils. I was like, dirt, just boiling dirt. And I was like, yeah, I think that's what I think it is. That's definitely a coal seam. So
yeah.
I get on. First I call King, and I'm like, hey King, I think I found one. And he's like. And he was tied up with something, so he's like, hey, why don't you call whatever our task force was at the time and give him a heads up on it and GPS it. And I was like, all right, yeah, on it, already GPSed it, and I'll give him a shout, And so they came in, and I think we already had it flagged off, but that's all they wanted us to do was flag it off and check it out and just be aware of it, and they just drop a pin on the big map.
Dangerous stuff.
Yeah, and I was in the middle of it. So yeah, I guess I had Liz come up and be like, check this out. And then we started looking around, and you're like, oh, man, this is way bigger than I thought, because I could just see a little chunk of it, and we started like opening our eyes to what was
probably
really
burning all over underneath.
All around us.
Yeah.
All the way up to the dozer line. So I was like, holy cow. And then where it had sloughed off, you could see just a big shelf of coal. I was like, whoa.
We went to a fire in Wyoming one year when I was on the hot shot crew, and there was, where the fire was, there was not a coal seam, but the fear was this fire was going to get into this area where there was a really, really big coal seam.
Oh no.
That was known,
Yeah.
and was probably going to be exploited at some time, but hadn't been yet. And they really did not want that fire to get in that, because it would have gone probably for miles down underground all over and everything.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of water drops and a lot of stuff to prevent that. And we never even saw the coal seam, but
really?
we were all aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild
It's
stuff.
different. It's different thinking about having coal seams in your fires and stuff,
Yeah, man, so much different just things in wildland fire, especially in Montana.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really varied.
It really varied, yeah.
And it is pretty deserty out in parts of eastern Montana. I mean, really, there's, even halfway out when you get out toward Browning and that country, or not Browning, out toward Ashland and Lame Deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's cactus and stuff.
Yeah, totally. We're just a little north of that, I think, and I want to say it's like Alzada or Ecolak or something. I can't remember.
It's stuff that us Western Montana folks never even think about,
Oh yeah. Oh man. And you probably had this before, but that was like this season or the year of chicken fried steak. So
yeah.
It was always like the first one. I was like, oh, this is the best chicken fried steak I've ever had in my life. And then after like 5 days, I'm like, I don't want to ever see a chicken fried steak again.
Yep.
Yep. But it was always like coming from some local spot. It was always just amazing, and you've been working your butt off all day. So a nice salty chicken fried steak always tastes amazing.
That's cool that you got to be involved with Great Northern, because like I told you, that I really enjoyed working with them and stuff.
Yeah, it was awesome. And they had a little turnover in leadership, a few times, I think, since I've been there. And man, one of the times I was like, I had just got my IC4 signed off, and I was like, man, this would be a great opportunity. Is that music? Are you hearing that? Oh, it's you. I was like, oh man, I'm hearing some music or something.
I'm shutting it off.
So do you have to take that?
Do that?
Oh no, it's fine. I just didn't know if you had an emergency or anything.
Did you just do Great Northern that one year?
No, so yeah, I went back in 2014 and crew
Okay.
bossed them, and Kerry was still there, and then Adrian Hahn, I think is his full name. He was a hell in a shot for a little bit, and he was the assistant. But Carrie, I think, was getting ready to go. She'd help teach in Africa, like a fire, like kind of like a guard school, I think.
Huh.
And so she was getting ready to do that, I want to say. So they were missing some overhead, and they didn't have quals to operate even as a Type 2 IA crew. So they brought me in to work on my crew boss and my IC4. And
Okay.
that was one of the better experiences I've had as a fire, as in a leadership position on fire, because I had a 20-person crew. We went up in R5. Hadn't spent a lot of time in R5. I'm trying to think ever. And then I got a 20-person crew of young folks. And we ended up going to, I think, right to Six Rivers, in the Mad River Ranger District, I want to say.
Huh.
And that was pretty cool. But you got the in-briefing of like, hey, there's a lot of grows around here. So here's the way you got to handle this. If you get on a fire, like make sure you're walking in a straight line, and if you run into something, go back the exact way you came and call somebody, and like don't cause any problems here, because there's some people out here that don't like federals.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, any feds around. So I'm like, okay, and they said a lot of times they don't know the difference. You see the badge in the door, so I was like, oh, cool,
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
And then we ended up getting a human cause start in the area, and it's, man, such a drought. And everyone's calling it the six puddles because there's like no water left because it's such a bad drought.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking it. Like one of the guys I got to be friends with was the engine foreman or engine captain now, I think. Really cool guy. And he's like, and when we came in, he's like, what are you working on? What do you got going on? I'm like, I'm still trying to get my C4 signed off. I had a few fires. I'm like, and I'm working my crew boss right now. So that pops. There's a bunch of structures. We lost like a shed, but being R5 is super easy fire. Like they call it run cards. The world shows up. We end up being like the second one's in. That guy initially takes it, hands it to me, and then it gets a little complicated from there because it's all getting ran through one repeater to Reading, right? And then after the action slows down, then they want you to switch repeaters. So they're like, hey, it's time to switch over. And so then I had to fish a little bit for that repeater, because being unfamiliar. And then, so that was kind of cool. And so we got to hang out, put that thing out. And then even the locals were super fun because they're like, man, it's a great fire to get signed off on. Saying like loud enough in front of ADON. And I was like, yeah, I hope so,
Yeah.
So that was just a great experience there,
So what was one of the things, being kind of in charge of a 20-person crew or overhead on a 20-person crew as a pretty new experience? I mean, and you were doing that all the time then with those folks. What was the most difficult, do you think?
The most difficult thing for me was 20-person crew is the downtime, because there's a lot of that, especially like on every fire assignment. I don't think there's any fire assignment I've ever been on that there wasn't some downtime.
Right.
It's just how it is, and that is the hardest thing for me to do, is keep the crew busy and safe, because they start doing just dumb things when they're, idle hands.
And the problem is a lot of times when you have the downtime, they don't really have a lot of stuff for you to do.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's just kind of
hold and hover,
and maybe not really wanting to hold and hover.
Yeah, and especially in the year, everyone's getting kind of restless end of the season.
Yep.
One thing that was kind of entertaining is there's this very flamboyant-looking gentleman who was driving a purple Jeep who would come by the Weaverville. We ended up getting moved over to Weaverville, and so I go get my briefing, and then I come back and brief the crew. And as I'm briefing the crew, we're like on their hose drying rack, big one, and everybody's like sitting on it, and I got the map out, and we're talking shop a little bit. And like clockwork, this flamboyant gentleman would come down this really bright colored, like purplish pink Jeep, blaring, God, I can't remember the song right now, but blaring this like goofy song every morning.
Really?
Yeah, it was like some 90s R&B song that was like really popular. Like everybody knew it. And then every morning, same song, every morning, same time. And so they would just be stuck in the crew's head for the rest of the day,
Yeah.
So it was just hilarious. He'd give us a big wave, he's really friendly, but he was blaring it. It was so loud. You could hear it coming. So it was usually right in the like the meat and potatoes of my briefing. I'm
right.
I said stop and like wait for him to go by. But I'd always wave because I thought it was funny too.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that downtime though was like the hardest for me to manage, as a leader.
Yeah.
Because when we're in it, like actually Bronson's little brother Dustin was on that crew with me, and he even said it like, at some point, or maybe he told Bronson, I can't remember, but he's like, man, operationally, like, man, Luke's, right up there with one of the best that I've experienced, but then, like, once the action's gone, I'm having a hard time, like, doing those leadership things. And I think that's what really separates the great leaders who can do both,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Dude, we've all been around him. I think Justin Abbey's a really good one that he's great all the time. Like, downtime, he's figuring out something to do, and he's probably going to be fun, and it's going to keep you entertained and safe,
Yep.
And then when shit's hitting the fan, Justin's got you, He's squared away. He's nails, You're going to be safe, and you guys are going to be kicking ass, and it's all good,
He's a good role model for sure.
Yeah, he's the man.
Yep.
Yeah, him and Danny.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that was the hardest part, but that was such a cool assignment. Like, there were so many, like, local, like, Montana kids that were on that crew, and on the weekends, probably because of all the pot plantations, they wouldn't let us camp out. So we had a hotel up, and one night, like, we ended up all the way out in Arcata, I want to say is where it was at, past, like, Fortuna. Fortuna Dispatch was the one that we were going through for a minute, and so Arcadia, whatever the name of that one is. Have you been up there?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's like right on the coast. But so it was really cool. So we got through like this little tiny like redwood grove. So we stopped there and kind of checked that out on the way out. Well, I guess that's what happened was we got dispatched. Run card hit, and we were like the last one on the run card. So like I kind of already knew, and Adon already kind of knew we were gonna get turned around. But the crew was pretty pumped. So we're heading out, and that's where we go through this redwood grove, and we get turned around right about that point. So we just like pull over, and then we gotta start making phone calls anyways for hotels, and so we do that. And Arcadia is the closest one, so we boogie out that way, and we're not too far out, but the sun's starting to go down. We're trying to get to the ocean before and surprise the kids because the kids, young adults, because they like most of them haven't seen the ocean.
Yeah.
So like we're like. Me and Adon are like, man, let's surprise them and let's go straight to the beach. And that's what we did. We went straight to the beach,
Yeah.
Soup truck, 2 buggies and a saw rig, and no one's there, and there's big dunes, and like it was amazing.
It's
like,
cool, yeah.
Yeah, just boots and like Nomex flying, and people just like running out in their underwear to dive in the ocean because they'd never seen one before. It's like, man, and I was sitting there watching. I was like, oh, I gotta jump in. So I ran in there too with them. I was like, oh, this is cool. When are you gonna do this? Again.
Yeah.
It was cold. Really
it's always interesting when you go to places like that. I know when we went to, we went to San Bernardino first, but we ended up in Malibu in '93 for a big fire there.
Malibu.
And there were folks there were a bunch of the hotshot crew folks that had gone back to school already. So we still went as a Type 1 crew because we took a bunch of overhead folks.
Oh, to
Bill
build the quals.
Burhop and Jim Leverton, folks that I grew up with in the fire world, who were in leadership positions, but they went with us. But there were some new folks, that we took with us too.
Yeah.
And some of them they'd never been to Southern California. And like you said, they'd never seen the ocean.
Yeah.
We were cutting across from inland to the coast and right at the edge of Hollywood, and they saw the Hollywood sign, and then everybody's seen it on TV, but, they're like, look, there's the Hollywood sign, and the Columbia Record Building was famous because it looks like a big, giant 45 RPM spindle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, and that it was designed, I guess, to look that way because it was Columbia,
The big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, big Columbia Records.
So
Yeah.
they're like, look at that,
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's always fun seeing people's, who've never been to these places before, their reactions to it and all.
Yeah, man, it just gives you
cool.
energy, and that's part of the reason what I was telling you earlier about wanting to take over the crew. It's just like those young fire folks are so excited about everything, and everything's cool, and it gets you excited too, and you remember like, man, yeah, that's the reason why I started doing this was like that, because I thought it was cool too, and I still think it's cool most of it.
It is cool, yeah.
So, but the problem is, it's similar to the hotshot life where you're just gone all the time, and by the time that I had the quals and the opening was there, I was, like getting pretty beat up and ready to be, because I was jumping at the time, so I was ready to be done,
Gotcha.
Traveling at least that much.
So then after Great Northern?
Yeah, after Great Northern, then, so working for Carrie and Margarita, who were still current jumpers,
Yep.
like, I was like,
to ask them questions and stuff.
picking their brain, and we got to work with some jumpers out in the East, and I already wanted to, but like being in the B-Bar-D, there's no hotshot crew. There's no type 1 at all. Nothing. You know, there's not a rappel crew. There's not jumpers. Nothing. You know, so this is the first time getting to hang out with some type 1 folks. Mike King being Bitterroot hotshot, you know, and then the 2 jumpers. So picking their brain, kind of sussing some things out. And at this point, Bronson's kind of asking him some questions too. Bronson Kimberling, but he was actually an AD. He'd take the season off because he was just moving on, going to do something else with his life at this point. And I'm reading the book called No Easy Day, which is a Navy SEAL book, and it just would look like the best book at Walmart when we're on our travels. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll check this out. But they talked, pretty in depth about the rookie training and more of the mindset, not so much like what they're doing, but like how would they get through something difficult. And it started getting my interest peaked a little bit more about going through a very difficult training and how I do and tips of how to survive. And the biggest one I took is how to eat an elephant, and so I kept repeating that when I was like going through as part of my mantra, a few of my mantras that I used. But I got interest then, and then kind of figure out the process and kind of what they're looking for, and
the jumpers, you mean?
The jumpers, yeah. And then actually at the end of that Great Northern season, I was still a student, but at this point I'm finishing up in Dillon. My track scholarship's over, which was a tuition waiver. So I went to a cheaper school in Dillon at UM Western, and then being the block schedule, I could still work pretty late in the season. Yeah. And so season was pretty much over at this point, but I had to pull the plug a couple days early than the rest of the crew. So I ended up getting a helicopter ride out with all jumpers. And so I get squished in a crew rig going back to Missoula, all jumpers and me, and mostly just listening the whole time. But got to talk to him a little bit about jumping, and then
stories and stuff.
Yeah, and then we pull up to the jump base in Missoula there at the AFD, and I help unload all our gear and put it in the jump base. First time I'd ever been in there, I was like, man, this could be me next year, And I think that's Drew Pattison was there, and I think he might have said something about that. I was like, yeah, that'd be cool. So then I got the itch real bad. I'm like, man, yeah, that's probably.
So then you applied then.
Yep,
over
applied everywhere. Season. Yeah, everywhere except for the BLM that year because I didn't know how the BLM worked. So I ended up missing their the window to apply to the BLM to Alaska to Fairbanks and Boise.
Yeah.
So threw it at all the jump bases. Had no idea what was good and what was bad. Just knew I wanted to jump. Mostly want to go to Missoula because just Missoula was the original jumpers I had known. The first jumpers I ever met were Missoula jumpers.
Right.
And then Man Gulch was one of the first hikes that I can remember as a kid going out with my dad, like really young, and it was really hot. And we hiked into Man Gulch.
Yeah.
And at that time they didn't upkeep Man Gulch as well, so like the crosses, the markers were under some pretty heavy vegetation. So my dad kind of had a hard time finding it, and then found one of the markers that was showing a little more, and so we checked it out. And I was really young, like I can't even remember. Like it's more of a hazy memory,
Yeah.
And so I guess that kind of put the bug in my brain for smoke jumping, and then being there with them, and then shotgunning my app out, calling everybody, going around shaking hands. I drove down to McCall. Grangeville wasn't taking interviews anymore, so I was just a little behind the curve on that. And I went to West Yellowstone and Missoula a couple times to talk to them.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I was there in Parker. It was one of my buddies was there, and he's like listing off the stats of people, and I must not have looked like I could cut the mustard. So if he's like, man, I got people who can do 20-some pull-ups, 100 push-ups, and run the 1.5 miles in under 9 minutes. And I was like, I'll do that all right now. And I'm in cowboy boots and like Levi's and in a flannel. And I was like, I'll do that right now, man. Like, and I would have, because I was in good shape and I was determined.
Yeah.
Like I was. Yeah. I could do like 30 pull-ups at that point. I could do way over 100 push-ups, and I could. The 1.5 miles would have been brutal, but I would have
could have done it.
Yeah, I would have done it in cowboy boots just to prove it,
Yeah, yeah.
And so he didn't.
Who was this you were talking to?
Parker. I'm trying to remember his full name, but he was on the CMT show back in the day. Jeez, man, I'm blanking.
That's okay.
Yeah, good guy. Yeah, sleeve tattoos, and I think he worked in Peaburg. So a few of the guys I work with out of Whitehall, some of my friends had worked with him before, and got along with him great, and like we're kind of cheering him on during the CMT show. The country, it was weird. Country Music Television did the smoke show, everything, Fall in Missoula. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Joy's husband was on that too, Ty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool.
Huh.
And so like then he probably saw how serious I was, and I was like, all right, man, okay. And then he ended up being like really cool. Like ever since then, man, like we'd been great. And so he was just kind of more teasing me and just feeling me out, I think. And
Yeah.
and then after he saw like how serious it was, and he was like real supportive, like, all right, man, well, you're a little late to the game, and which I was. And he's like, here's what you do, and here's a good recipe, for next year to be a little bit better of an applicant, like start a little earlier, try to get a shot crew this year. Usually it's like 3 seasons before you can get on, and which I already knew. So I was like, yeah, that's what I was planning on.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
So I was starting to make the phone call to all the shot crews. Farm, I want to say, had just taken over Flathead.
Yep.
Jay still had Bitterroot.
Yep.
Man, Fred was Helena. He's still there, I think. And I'm not sure who was running Lewis and Clark, but I was working my way through to call everybody. And Lewis and Clark was kind of low on my list because I'd spent a lot of time in Great Falls already with my grandma living there and stuff.
Right.
So like,
Right.
I want to see some new country. And I heard a lot of good things about Jay and Farm and Fred. So like those were kind of my 3. And then I was going to start working Region 3 too, so I'm working with Flagstaff before, so I was going to call them and a few other places down there.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I ended up, the only place that actually called me was NCSB, so North Cascade Smoke River Base.
Huh.
And like, even when they called me, I was like, I don't know if I said it out loud, but in my head, I was like, are you sure? Like, you want me? Like, I don't have any hotshot experience at this point. I have nothing, I'm just a district guy. Just barely enough time in grade to be, a rookie because you got to be a GS5, and they like you to have your IC5 and your firefighter type 1 or squad boss in like 290 or something.
Right.
So just had just barely enough quals to do it, So I get the call from them, and then I call them back a while later after I'm kind of seeing that no one else is interested, and everyone. Well, and then I forgot to add this part. There was a hiring freeze. Do you remember?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember how long it lasted, but I think it lasted a few years. So, like,
Yeah.
all the folks who want to jump out of West, I think every one of them still wanted to jump pretty much, besides, like, a couple, and then they had backfilled those already with some of my buddies who were, really good folks. So, so they were already stacked up, and same with all majority of the Region 1s, like Grangeville and Missoula, and then the reason why NCSB was still available because they weren't sure they were going to have a class because they didn't have the funding.
Right.
So last minute they had room for 4, and I can't remember what happened, but like they were in the air between me and like a few other people. The other ones didn't seem that interested, and then I showed up. So that's how I ended up kind of edging them out.
And you were definitely interested.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I had like a pretty form-fitting T-shirt, and at this point I've interviewed quite a few times, so like I'm pretty well dialed in the interview, and
Yeah.
If any folks are listening, like definitely want to go through a few because my first one was bad. Like interview was Missoula first, should have interviewed with them last because that's where I wanted to be, but I was happy to go anywhere at this point though, like. And NCSB ended up being kind of a blessing because it's so cool. It's an old school base. Not too many people get jumps out of there because they don't have a lot of fire.
Where is it?
Oh, North Cascade Smoke River Base in Winthrop, Washington.
Yeah, Winthrop. Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of between the two towns of Winthrop and Twisp.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then there's another little cool area. Mazama isn't too far away, and the Mazama store is awesome. But yeah, just a bunch of really, really cool folks I got to meet, and hadn't spent much time in R6, so got to fight some fire in R6 and go to a lot of cool places. And I mean, I jumped a lot of fire that year. I went and jumped the basin, the Great Basin out of Pocatello, and I think I got to jump out of Boise. Not the Boise Forest I wanted to, because I guess it's pretty rare. Maybe not anymore, but it used to be. And then got to jump out of McCall. Got to jump out of Redding. Got to jump out of NCSB. So like I was.
So was the training like you thought it would be?
Yeah, it's right there. The only thing I didn't really plan for was the heat. So that almost got me the first day because it was unseasonably hot. Even the trainers, I think, had to reevaluate us the first day and kind of, maybe scale some things back a little bit because it was just so hot. And you're in your jumpsuit a good portion of the day, and those don't breathe at all.
No.
And there's no wind.
Sweat.
Yeah, and it was in like the mid-90s, I think, at one of those days. And I remember looking at one of the rookie candidates that he didn't make her, but he was a good guy. And I remember like looking at him at the top of the tower. I just climbed the stairs, and he's about to get hooked up to do a practice jump out the door, and he's looking in my direction. And the trainer made him look at the trainer himself, because his face was like cherry red, like bright red tomato, and I could see it through his mask, like a ways away. And I was like, I wonder if I look like that.
Yeah.
That's not good. But Phil was pretty tough. He kept cruising. But there was a spigot at the bottom of this tower, so like almost every time or every other time, I would just drench myself, and it was really cold, and just kept my body temperature down and just chug water. Because the first day I wasn't. I got behind the curve, and it almost didn't make it the first day. I almost washed day one. So
yeah, it's tough stuff, man, especially when it's hot.
Yeah. I've always kind of had a little issue with cramping in the heat, like ever since like that New Mexico roll. And so like my hands were curled in and my feet were curled in, so I had a hard time getting my boots off. And the last thing in the day, we did this hill run. And so I had to get my PT clothes. I had to get my like Nomex and boots off and get on my PT clothes. I had a hard time getting my PT shoes on.
Your hands didn't want to function right.
Yeah, my hands didn't want to tie, and my feet were curled up too. So
I know what you're talking about. That's weird. That how your body gets affected by heat and the lack of probably enough water. And, electrolytes and all that stuff. It's crazy.
Sweat out all the
Not
salts.
fun.
Not fun. Yeah.
Not fun.
I could feel the kind of tunnel closing a little bit, but also I was like, I'm not giving up. I'm gonna die here. So they ended up having to rein me in at the end of the day, and kind of made me walk the last little bit. And they made me walk the last little bit. So like, if you go tits up and we have to get you, they didn't say tits up, but if you go down, you will. Then we'll have to put you in the ambulance, gotta take you to the hospital, and there's no way you're gonna complete rookie training. If you just like walk and let us look at you in the EMT and maybe see how you're doing and review your day, and there's a chance that you can come back tomorrow. Yeah. So they talked me into like chilling out for that last it wasn't even very long. I just ended up having to walk the last little bit down the hill, and but I'm thinking I'm done. They make me go to my dorm room by myself. Yeah. Or no, they brought the EMTs with me, and then they gave me this like rough electrolyte mix called Ceralite with the C, and it's like a rice thing. Oh, it tasted horrible, but I knew I needed it, so I chugged a ton of that Pedialyte.
And they, through experience, I mean, they know the right stuff to give you too. You know, they've probably done a lot of experimenting over the years. Yeah, coming up with things that work for most, in quotes, people.
Yeah, that Ceralite was something else. But like you said, it worked though. They knew it, and so that whole night I got like zero sleep because I was just hammering food and mostly fluids and trying to get my water to electrolyte ratio and in balance. Yep. And then so I had to pee like nonstop all night. So I got like no sleep. And so day 2 I'm coming in, a little bit almost like an electrolyte hangover, so I could feel like a little sluggish, but I wasn't gonna be denied. I was gonna be a smoke jumper. So like
you're gonna have to totally go down before you're gonna give up.
Yeah, exactly, man. I read this quote before I started. It was like a man or a human can only be beaten 2 ways: either he quits or he dies. And I'm like, well, I'm not quitting. So that was my mindset, and it got me through. Like I gave it hell, but also found like a survival gear too. Like my first day, I made the mistake of trying to win rookie training. I was trying to be the best rookie to ever rookie. So I went out hard. Like I was
maybe too hard.
Yeah, I went out too hard. Yeah, because I was trying to win everything. Like I was like competing with my rookie bros instead of working with them.
Gotcha.
And, learned that lesson hard. And so out of 4 people, only 2 of us made it. And my one buddy, God, I'm blanking on his name right now. Johansson. My buddy Johansson, me and him were the only 2 that made it out of the 4 folks, and Johansson helped me out a ton. So like he knew some jumpers and talked to some folks. He's a little older than I am, so he had some good wisdom and that he shared with me and really helped me out about like, it's not about winning it, man. It's about surviving it. And he's like, so to keep that in mind. He's really nice about it, Justin Johansson. Yeah. Yeah. So he helped me out a lot. It was great having him.
You don't got to win everything. You just gotta do it and pass it.
Yeah, totally. And I kind of knew. I did know that going in because like Bronson, he was in the military, so he'd done quite a bit more training than I had. And he's like, and then my other friend had jumped on a call. He's like, man, if you don't stop and you don't quit, they can't really get rid of you. So Just remember that. So what he's kind of saying is like, find that survival gear, like where you're pushing it, but you're not going to burn yourself out because
Right.
you don't know how far you're going to be running. You don't know how far you're going to be hiking. You don't know
Yeah.
how long you're going to be carrying the heavy weight. Like we carried a lot of weight during that rookie training, and oh man, yeah, it was pretty wild. It's like if one of us struggled with something, the cadre, it was like blood in the water for sharks. They're like, oh, that looks uncomfortable. Let's do that more.
Yeah.
It was pretty fun that way. Like, man. So
Walt Smith used to talk about that. He was our AFMO down at Sula, and he'd been a career jumper. Actually, he left Sula and went back to jumping for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was the head trainer, and Fritzen got his job a while after Walt left. But Mike used to always talk about, man, what a heavy load knowing that I have Walt Smith's job.
Yeah.
But Walt was that way. He'd push people hard, but he knew just the right point to quit pushing because they were going to do it.
Yeah.
There's no point in killing them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I talked to afterwards. I talked to like the cadre there, and then at Missoula too, because Missoula usually has a pretty big class, and they got it down to pretty good science. It seems like in Missoula there, and
Yeah.
kind of like you said, like part of it, part of the method to the madness is that you want to make sure folks want it. You don't want to just like have some people who kind of want it, and then they're kind of dangerous because they're not, like putting in a full effort and not, get the most of the training.
And they can tell, man. They,
Mhm.
they, especially those folks that have been jumping for a long time that are part of that training cadre.
Yeah.
They know. They can tell just by watching you guys because they've seen it.
Yep.
They can tell when people are dogging it or. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You
Yeah.
know,
Exactly.
they know.
Yeah. Like reserving a little too much in
And
the tank.
they'll either push you harder if they think you're dogging it, or they'll just encourage you, to keep it up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And they're trying to bring team players, and like they can tell if you're an individual.
Yep.
And then that's not a good place to be either, because you don't want that in any aspect of fire, and it.
Right.
The individual person's not a good team player, and fire's all about teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's gonna make rookie training quite a bit harder if you're in that attitude,
So you made it.
So I made it, yeah.
And so your first fire jump was where? Do you remember?
Yeah, first fire jump was NCSB. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was really cool because man, I'd heard some like kind of horror stories about one rookie class just having a slow year and not getting any jumps out of NCSB.
Does happen from time to time.
Yeah, so I was like, oh man, because you can't get any of the gear, so you don't get any swag from unless you earn it from a jump. So you can't even represent your rookie class. So some of those guys got jumps out of Redmond, so they're able to wear Redmond stuff, but they couldn't even wear their own home base gear. So like that was in the back of my head. I was like, oh man, I need to jump. And then so this is kind of a funny story. Alaska is going off pretty good in 13, so everybody gets stuck to Alaska besides like two of the cadre. There's only two of us, so only two cadre really even need to be there. The base manager, I want to say, but even our damn plane, the Casa, got sucked up to Canada or to Alaska. So we don't have a plane for like a day or two, which is a nightmare because we're in jump mode, and then you go back to PT mode,
Yeah.
like so we ended up being a little rough on us for a day or so, but
Right.
Grangeville luckily has their own plane, or had, I think they still do, a Twin Otter, so which is good because we were jumping off a Casa, so we got the experience of the Twin Otter, which is nice. You get that experience out of rookie training, so
Yeah.
you have two different planes that you have experience with. So, and they're a little different, small door versus large door. And so we get the Twin Otter for the weekend, but we only get it for like 3 days is all they'll let us have for it. And we're about halfway through our jumps, I think. So we got to hammer through jumps. We have like, 3 in a row of 3-day jumps. And so it seems easy. You're jumping on the plane and, pack up, go back to the jump base, grab a new chute, do an AAR, and then go again. But it wears you out.
Oh, I bet.
Man, after 3 jumps in a day, holy cow.
Yeah.
You're whooped. So doing that 3 days in a row, I think, is what we ended up doing, and pretty wore out. And so that was kind of fun. And yeah, then, it was pretty much over at that point. We had a few other things before we were actually like, officially rookies, because you're rookie candidate until you make it through rookie training.
Right.
And then we're officially rookies.
Right.
But then you're not a jumper until you get a jump. So we're just rookies. So then the plane's gone, right? And Grangeville takes their plane back, and we get a boost request for Redmond, Oregon, which isn't that far. So we have this jelly bean green van, and we all jump my first boost instead of usually getting a plane and flying somewhere, or getting picked up by a plane. We're in a van driving to Redmond.
Yeah.
So we're just right behind a big lightning bus that went through, and they jumped out. We get there, everything's done. We got a couple slow days there, and
no fires to jump right off the bat.
no fires at all. Yeah. Pretty slow. Not very many folks from Redmond actually there, because they're all out fighting fire. But a few folks that were there that met us at the door were like, "Our rookies are here," because they didn't have a rookie class. We're the only 2 rookies in all of Region 6. So like, "You're rookies?" I'm like, "Yeah, come on in. We've been waiting for you."
Yeah,
like,
boy, we
no.
have some fun for you.
Yeah. So I got to learn how to use a broom at NCSB and at Redmond. Yeah, but they were fun. It was a good time, and a cool spot there in Redmond. And so bust, we get no fires. And then a couple days of just like hanging out, and then the base starts filling back up. People are coming off fires and days off and coming back in. So we're getting heavy. They don't need us anymore. And how jumpers use it is like, once on the road, stay on the road. Like, boosters boost is the nice thing they say. So like, a boost request comes to Redmond. If you already have boosters, you send those boosters out. They keep rolling. So that's what happens. We keep rolling, but we're still in the van, in the green van. So we take another boost to Redding, California, from Redmond, Oregon.
And you had all your stuff, all your jump stuff crammed in the van too.
In the stupid van.
Yeah.
And then so we go there, and it is hot. Oh my God, is it hot! At this point, Redding, California.
Oh, it gets hotter than hell there.
Hotter than hell. Their facility is not what it is now. Like, now it's nice. They have like an indoor gym. I don't think they make the boosters like suit up in the big wind tunnel warehouse that's blowing 110 air on you. And but then that was the case. Their suit up racks were out in on the elements pretty much. I mean, they're in the warehouse, but the warehouse is wide open. The bay door is, to try to help cool. Yeah, it doesn't work. And then the like weights and fitness equipment is just on a slab across the street, like across the little.
I remember
street.
We went to that first roll with the Hot Shot crew that I went on in '84. We went to Nevada to a fire, and then they flew us to Redding because there were a bunch of fires going on in the area.
Yeah,
and we hung out at the jump base. Actually, Walt Smith was down there with the Missoula jumpers. They came down to boost.
Oh, that's cool.
So, but I remember in '84, their quarters it was pretty primitive, actually, from what I remember.
Probably the same thing when I got there in 2013.
Yeah, it was pretty primitive.
Yeah, all the weight equipment, the metal stuff like the plates and the barbells and stuff, all had a little rust on it for the weather, and they called it the yard, like prison yard. So like out there getting fitness in the yard.
Yeah,
it was kind of funny. And then,
but yeah, you're right. Redding is so hot. It's just so
at first thing in the morning hot. Like, I'd go for a run. Like, as soon as they let us free for PT, I'd go for a run, and you run around the airstrip. So like, where public can't go, so you go buzzing out there. And so I go about as far as I could stand it before it got too ridiculously hot. And the local Redding jumpers are no problem. They're used to, they roll, and so I cruise back, and then I go hit the yard, for just a little bit of weight session, then get in and towel off and start the day.
Yeah.
But
crazy.
What happened when I found out in Redding, because I knew poison oak was a oil, right, and it gets on everything, but I didn't know how bad it was. And I mean, it covers everything, like literally, like
it's awful.
The entire jump base pretty much is covered in that oil. It's so fine you don't notice it. But one of my friends was checking chutes, and I think he knew he was allergic, but I don't know if he knew he was this bad. But he ended up having to go to the hospital, and all he was doing was checking chutes.
It was on the chutes.
On the chutes, yeah.
It gets on everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bad deal. Poor
I
guy.
was one of the lucky ones that never was affected by it, and the people that were doing the exactly same thing I was would just look like they had leprosy sometimes,
Yeah, same here. Yeah, like I got lucky.
Horrible blisters and everything like that. So, when there was stuff to be mopped up underneath poison oak, who got to do it was the one that so far had never been affected by it.
Volunteered.
Luckily, I never was affected by it, but
me too. I heard that sometimes it can come back on you, but like Sam, I never had any. I've been rolled all in it, and never any issues.
All those trips to that country, over the years, people had all kinds of folks on the crew would always get it and everything. And sometimes, if they didn't, we tell them to, but people didn't. They would just put away the same line gear for the next year, and they'd come back and get their gear out, and they'd get it because the oil was still on the the line gear.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but I remember,
Told you to wash it.
yeah. Bronson's little brother got it pretty bad out in eastern Montana. It must have been ivy. I don't know, maybe it's oak out there. I don't know.
Doesn't matter. It's all evil.
All the poison. Yeah, it's just that poison. And so like his brother. So the fellow guy was Dustin, Bronson's little brother, and so they like hosing him down with all the tech new and all the stuff that's supposed to kill it. And then got him new Nomex clothes, new sleeping bag. It helped, but it still seemed like it was kind of lingering, like it probably was on something else.
Stuff's miserable. I just felt so bad for folks that would get it so bad, and, just awful.
It is. Oh, it's just awful, man. Terrible.
Yeah.
So then, so that was my rookie. So that was my rookie season.
So you did quite a few fires that season, then?
Yeah, quite a few fires. So I go to Redding. So plane's not there in NCSB, so we get shipped to Redmond and then nothing. Then we go to Redding and nothing. But then a boost request comes in for McCall. So then we go to McCall, and that was super cool because then the first night, I want to say Bronson's on a fire. But I guess to kind of circle this around, the reason why I keep mentioning Bronson is because he's the one who got me back into fire because he got into fire, I think, in 2006. And then when they finally did a hire event and there's more positions open, he's like, man, you should get into fire. This is a really fun job. I think it's right up your alley. So that's how I got in 2008 was because of Bronson. And then my friends in Whitehall like were reaching out to like not long after.
Right.
So I got on the Whitehall crew. And then he's the one who got me in the Great Northern in 2012 because they were down a squad boss, so he brought me on.
Yep. And
then so we both started like talking about rookie training, and then my little brother, who was running cross country and track for Pocatello for ISU, wrote us up this awesome workout plan, especially like mileage and mile repeats and all these things and these timelines. Cool. Yeah, like like a professional cardio workout, but like a long term one. So me and him were going through the same workout regimen and all that, and then he starts in McCall a week before I start in NCSB.
Huh.
And it was kind of horrible that way, though, because he got, that brutal first, like, hell week.
Yeah.
And I've known him most of my life, like almost my entire life, right? And so talked to him when he's overseas, talked to him, when he could talk to him, like at basic or any training he was at.
Right.
And I'd never heard him sound so rough in my entire life than after that first week.
Yeah?
Yeah. So, like, I talked to him Friday night, and I'm starting on Monday, and I'm like, oh, no.
Oh, boy.
He's like,
here we go.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, like, I didn't need that, but I'm pretty confident,
Yeah.
I worked my buns off. I knew the determination I had already built up to resolve. So, like, I knew I had a really good resolve. So I wasn't too worried about it. But also, like, one of the toughest guys I know is sounding like he just got hit by a truck,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, man.
It's wild.
Yeah. So I go to McCall, and he was super smart. He was working the oil field, so he bought this, I think it was like a 26-foot McGregor sailboat.
Huh.
And that's one we tried to sail to the Bahamas on, but that's a story for a different day.
Huh.
But because he knew he was going to be in McCall and knew there was a lake.
The lake, yeah.
Yep. And so he rented a slip, didn't tell anybody. So none of the jumpers, nobody knew. They give you a room in the dorms in like a cabin, I think, and then that's where they expect you to be. And then some people kind of mess you on the weekends, but they could never find him because he had his boat slip, and his boat they didn't tell anyone about, and it's behind like a gate, so there's no way to find out unless it just happened to spot
So he'd
him.
go out on the lake.
So he'd go on the lake and like enjoy himself and like get a break from all that.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's just really smart.
That lake is cool.
Oh, it's so awesome.
Is that Payette Lake?
I want to say it's Payette Lake.
I think so.
And so when I show up to McCall, he's on a fire, but somehow he figures out that I'm there. Maybe because I think he talked to my brother. And my brother had planned a trip down there, oblivious to me. And my brother rode his motorcycle from Lolo all the way down to McCall.
Huh.
Yeah, on this badass victory bike that he had, like custom built. Not himself, but he had, like ordered it that way.
Cool.
So so my buddy Bronson rolls back from assignment, and he treats me like a king. Like, he's like, all right, man, what time you get off? He's like, all right, I'll come pick you up. And I don't know anything beyond that, but I know I'm going to go stay with him on a sailboat. And he's got it set up because he's the living quarters in there. It's a great boat. And so I show up, and he's got like a cooler full of beverages. He's got 2 fat steaks. He's got some potatoes, and he's got the grill already going on the sailboat. Yeah, it's just like so awesome. And like the sun's not quite going down, but it's starting to kind of work its way down the sky. So you're getting that kind of golden hour. And we hung out, caught up, exchanged some war stories about rookie training, and surviving. And then we kind of motored over to the yacht club, I think maybe that night. Yeah, that night, and hung out and got to know a bunch of the other jumpers and stuff. Is super cool. And then the next night, my brother comes down. I had no idea he was going to be there. And so that was kind of cool. Got to hang out with him and hang out on the sailboat a little bit and relax. And then we spent a couple days there, and then same thing happened, man. We were just behind the lightning bust, and they got full. And then NCSB was starting to take some weather, and I think they're getting storms, so they hadn't jumped anything yet. But on the way back, I think, because our CASA had came and got us, came from NCSB down to McCall.
Okay.
Picked us up. We flew back, jump ready, and they told us they were going to jump this fire that, I guess maybe before they came and picked us up, they jumped the base out onto this thing. It's a pretty gnarly country, and so I can't remember exactly what we're going to do, but we don't end up jumping. And pretty cool because this guy was a contract pilot for Bighorn. I think that Bighorn also contracted planes overseas in like Afghanistan and stuff. So he has like his hot entry or whatever. Like where, if you're coming in like a hot airstrip, like you have a certain pattern where you just like buzz in and get down real quick.
Yeah.
So he did that for us in the Meadow Valley, and that was super cool. I remember ripping by some lookout, and it's just like right out the window. Like, oh man,
that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I did that, and then so we landed, and I didn't know anything at this point, so I'm like, oh, I guess we're not going. And then the next day, I think first thing we ended up jumping in to reinforce them, and then went and did that, and then they were in a bunch of other resources, a bunch of helicopters. I think there might have been a couple other fires, and so we get a helicopter ride off. They bring 2 shot crews to kind of finish it off, and we put in a bunch of sawline stuff for them, and so that was kind of cool. Got to hang out with them, and that was my first fire jump. It was there in CSB.
Cool.
And, one of the jumpers, like I hit the ground, and unbeknownst to me, is he was going around. He was on the booth with us, so he's going around buying T-shirts at every place. And if we don't get a jump, then he just keeps them as a souvenir. But if we do, he's got a pocket, 2 T-shirts for me and my rookie bro, in his pocket,
gotcha.
in his jumpsuit pocket to give us, because that's you're in your shirt. So I hit the ground, and me and my rookie bro jumped, the same fire together. And as I hit the ground, I think I can see my rookie bro Justin Johansson, one of the other jumpers, peels off the shirt he's wearing, gives it to Johansson, and then Tim Lum comes cruising over to me real quick, peels off his shirt, throws it to me. And it's kind of a dirty, sweaty shirt, but it's like still pretty pumped to have it. So I threw that sucker
that's
out.
cool.
And, I was just on cloud 9, and then we went after the fire, and it's a pretty steep country, but I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
Then we get back to NCSB, and ends up being a helicopter from B-Bardese there, and so like I know the whole Helitech crew.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it was really cool. We got to hang out with them.
It's cool how that works sometimes,
Yeah, my first fire, I get to see them and hang out, and and then
excellent.
Yeah, so that was a good season there. And then 2014 was pretty slow. Do you remember that?
2014 was on West Fork. It was actually not like the 3 previous years, but it was okay.
West Fork's always
for fire-wise, and the rest of the forest, I really don't remember. We would get so absorbed out there in that world.
Yeah.
That it's like it was your own forest out there, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it still kind of feels that way too, because it's so remote. And like you said, this just the way this, like when I spent that season in part of the season in dispatch, just watching the weather patterns, like they'd split and go north and south, and they'd hammer West Fork, and maybe a few starts in Sula on its way by, but the rest of the forest really wouldn't get touched.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of wild because, like you said, West Fork always had its own thing going on.
Yeah, and there was that stretch where we had a lot of stuff going on every year. It seemed like,
Yeah.
And then it quieted down. And,
Yeah, it's kind of quiet this year, huh?
Really quiet this year.
Yeah, whole forest, really.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
My first year out of fire.
I know.
Yeah.
So, see, you didn't really miss too much.
Yeah, it's a coincidence. No, and then, 2014 was kind of slow. I got to jump a pretty cool Fireball Highlight Reservoir up above Bozeman.
That was the your second year?
Second year.
Second year.
And I transferred over to West Yellowstone because
Gotcha.
NCSB's budget was attached to the forest. So they had positions open, but they couldn't fill them because they didn't have the budget for it.
Gotcha.
So, and it was really cool because they were honest with me. Like, if you want to come back, we'd love to have you, but we can't. We don't know when you will be able to offer you a perm. And
Right.
up until recently, it was kind of the case.
Right.
So I was like, all right, well, had a great time here, and I'd love to come back, especially because your second year, you're not like the rookie anymore, so you get to kind of enjoy your spot more. Your rookie year, you don't want to mess up, and you're trying to earn your keep,
Yep.
So go to West, but it was also kind of a blessing in itself because like West Yellowstone's awesome. You got to go there. And
Kevin Erickson mostly jumped out of West.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he started in Missoula, but I mean he went over there, and then that's I think for the rest of his time that he did jump.
Oh really?
He didn't. I don't believe he jumped after South Canyon in '94.
So I was gonna ask 94. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he. Well, it was '88 that he rookied.
Yeah.
Because '87 Kevin was on our crew, on the Hot Shot crew.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so he was over there from '88 through 94.
And he's in the valley here, isn't he?
Huh? Yeah,
He lives
over on the east side.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because his brother-in-law Gary Mitchell works out at the Trapper Job Corps there, and
I know Gary really well. Yeah. And Kevin is married to Don Mackey's sister, Jan.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Jan, to this very day, is the one that I get my haircuts from when I get one.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Man, I didn't know. Small world, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Gary was brought up my podcast to him. And
Gary worked at Darby for a while. That's where I first met him, I think.
Yeah.
Way back.
Yeah, I think he spent a little stint on the shots, too, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm sure he must have traveled with us somewhere, but he wasn't actually on our crew anyway, a full-time crew member.
Oh, maybe just filled.
Yeah.
Did you call
And
him
then he got the job at the Job Corps and stuff. So.
Oh, gotcha. Did you call him Phil?
Huh?
Did you call him Phil back in those days?
I don't remember calling him a nickname or anything.
Really? Yeah. I was sure that was like the rumor, like you either get Phil or what's the other one? There's another one that's like if you're just, filler. I can't think of the other one. It'll probably come to me. But so 2014, kind of nothing too exciting except for that's when I took the Great Northern to California.
Yeah.
At the end of the season there. So I had a pretty good pan. I did a lot of IC4 stuff that year. So I IC'd that one, and the Gallatin Repeller showed up, and one of my friends from the BBRD days ended up being like I don't know what they call the like repeller in charge.
Huh.
But we call him jumper in charge, the JIC.
Mm-hmm.
So I tied in with him, and so it was kind of cool to see him again. And then so we had a really good fire there, and then and that one actually was kind of weird because it was in the watershed, and they sent the world at it for a minute, and then I just took everybody because I was like, well, you're already almost here, and I don't know, like we'll just smash this thing anyways. And I guess the original direction from the forest was that their local district folks were going to take it over, and no one relayed that to me, so I just kept it. And then find out afterwards that a couple folks like higher ups in the forest and the Gallatin Forest were not happy. It was only the Gallatin then. It was Gallatin National Forest, not Gallatin Custer.
Right.
Or Custer Gallatin or whatever. But
yeah.
So I ended up having a big team meeting, me and Dean Chambers, who was my trainer at the Hepkin Ranger District, there in West Yellowstone. Yeah, big teleconference deal. And that's back like before Teams and stuff, where there was like a thing. So like doing this big teleconference with like the Forest FMO and the Ranger and like all these like all these higher ups that were like wondering why we did what we did.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
you didn't know.
Exactly, I'm totally oblivious, and they figured it out. I think partway through, and I was like, hey, and I went in just thinking it was like they just were curious, because Gallatin still doesn't want to see that much fire, so like I thought they were just kind of curious to see how things went, and get some feedback from us. So I came in just like, hey, thanks for calling us, like really appreciate it, like, hopefully we did some good work for you. It was great to work with your folks and with Gallatin, and just approach it how I'd always would, because it was awesome that the local district folks came up. But I think they end up saying something that kind of like caught me a little bit like sideways. I was like, I think one of the people was still a little bitter, and I was like, oh, I didn't, sorry, I didn't know you had one of your people take it over. And I was like, I don't know how they were going to take it over because they had no supplies. We actually had, because it's what happened. We actually did have to supply them with our food boxes because they didn't have enough supplies to stay the the full like
Huh.
3 days I think that we ended up having it. So we shared our rations with them, which was fine. We don't care, no big
Yeah.
deal. But it's just like if you're sending your folks to take over a fire, they're not even equipped to take it over, and they didn't want it. They because I offered when they showed up. I was like, hey, did you guys want to have this thing? And they didn't want it. So I was like,
So it wasn't your fault.
no, that's
Yeah.
why I explained. I think after they heard the full story on things, like,
Got it all figured out then.
yeah, just miscommunication.
Misunderstanding, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Miscommunication, yeah.
And who knows, like if they told someone in our overhead and then it just didn't quite make it to me or whatever ended up happening. But like in the end, it was all good. I think we ended up kind of almost bridging the gap between the jump base and some of the folks in the forest who they've been standoffish with us a little bit,
Huh.
because we're like, hey, whatever you guys need. And so yeah, it ended up being pretty cool. And then I'm trying to think. Jumped another fire over by Deer Lodge, jumped a bunch on the Panhandle. Man, we jumped a fire that was the 1910 burn scar. There hadn't been fire, as far as anyone knew, in that area since 1910.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, and the DO duty officer, hit me up and he's like, "How's it looking?" I'm like, it's good. I think we're gonna get her, And I was calling for every resource available, but it was a giant lightning bust, the whole Panhandle, like most of Idaho, and I think I'm trying to remember how it worked out, but every resource I called got turned away to a different fire, bigger priority or whatnot, And we were just at the beginning of the bust, so like, they were, didn't know what they had. They were just trying to get everybody on everything, and it's in August, I think. So they're trying to, or maybe it's not quite August yet because I had the Great Northern August, I think. But it's like, fire danger is high.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I finally work my way down to Boise, and I get through just asking and get availability and working with Coeur d'Alene Dispatch. And so finally, Boise's got a load of jumpers, and I was like, I'll take them. Like, we're trying to keep this thing here, and that was the direction from the duty officer. So I'm like, for sure. So
send them. Yeah.
Yeah, send them. So I'm getting updates like, the 2 folks gone. They got 6 left. Do you still want them? Yep, still want them. And then, like half hour later, down to 4 folks. You still want them? I was like, yes, still send them. And then, down to 2 folks. You still want them? And they were kind of not wanting me to have them. I was like, yeah, if you guys can spare them, we'll take them. And then they jumped another fire. So,
jeez.
Yeah, they unloaded before they even got to us. I was like,
well, you would have had a good bunch. Maybe.
Yeah, totally. And so it ended up just being 8 folks on it. And we got lucky. You got saved by like a north-facing aspect with a game trail. So it hung up on the ridge and the time of day, towards the evening, hung itself up on the ridge with a little help from us. And
that's lucky.
Yeah, really lucky. And but it started off kind of rough. Like our cargo ended up like getting kicked different, or the wind switched, something happened, and our cargo ended up in the fire, so we lost like a food box.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and maybe a saw or something, I can't remember, but lost a couple boxes. A little sacrifice there, but it ended up being a pretty cool fire. But it was thick, man. When he said something about like, how's it look, and I was like, okay. He's like, yeah, pretty thick, huh? I was like, yeah, it's real thick. He's like, yeah, it hasn't been a fire in there since 1910.
Wow.
And then the fire scars that we did see were on some giant timber, just these like stobs that were just left over, So
that's a long time.
Yeah.
Over 100 years.
Yeah, it was crazy. Because one of the guys, I forgot why he ended up going down. Oh, because one of the boxes had tumbled, so he was going down. Him and another guy went down to recover the box. Went all the way down to the creek bottom, and he said they passed some massive, stumps on the way down there.
God.
I was like,
what would they have been? What kind of trees?
I don't know. I mean, because there was a bunch of white bark in the area, so I heard like white bark get pretty big, but maybe ponderosa too, because there's a bunch of ponderosa that were there too. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, some kind of old growth. I mean, yeah. What do you think? I guess it's kind of near Avery, Idaho country.
Yeah, that sounds about right, I guess.
Yeah, because it's a little more dry, so I don't know. I mean, yeah. Well,
they probably didn't have like that many cedars and stuff.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think it was wet enough for cedars.
Yeah,
but I think it was.
I mean, there were lots of cedars in that country over by Wallace and those 1910. The Big Burn area.
I wonder, maybe it were cedars. I mean, down there in the creek bottom, it could have been some cedars. Yeah, I bet it was. Yeah, some giant cedars back there in the creek bottom. That makes sense.
Could have been. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see them, so. Yeah, so that was a cool fire. Spent some days on it and hiked off, and it was so thick. I had my hard hat fiber taped to my pack just because it kept getting ripped off my head by the brush.
Yeah.
So I just fiber taped in my pack and just was literally bear crawling through these little like holes, thinking I was gonna run into a bear because we had already had a cub like kind of messing with us.
Huh.
And not a cub, like a 1-year-old or 2-year-old or something, like a small black bear.
Yeah.
Hanging around the whole time we were there. So I'm thinking I'm gonna run into his mama or daddy in this trail, and I'm all by myself, and I hear the branch rip my hard hat off, and I hear it tumble, but I'm not even on like a slope, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get through this little thicket, and I'll turn around, should be right there. Never found it.
Really?
Yeah, like took my pack off, but didn't leave it, like drug it back with me so I wouldn't lose it. It was so thick, that thing was gone. Like I looked at everywhere for it, and finally I was like, well, I'm running out of time here. So, we got someone to come pick us up. So
yeah,
it's in the forest somewhere. Never gonna get it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that thick, insanely thick.
That is thick.
Like unable to hike through really. And
can't even see it or anything.
Yeah, can't see anything. Yeah, can't hear anything because the brush is so thick. It's just scraping on your body, and you're moving all the brush. It's like,
yeah,
if there was some giant animal right there, man, he would have heard me coming and had me.
Yeah,
Wouldn't have known the difference, I guess.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, and then I had that fire and a few other cool little things happen that season, and just being in West Yellowstone's really cool. And they're like, a lot of the jump bases have like sirens or like horns or something, for like a fire call.
Right.
And West Yellowstone's is Lone Ranger.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pre-programmed into like this switch. I don't know how they did it, and it's been there forever, but like when the fire call comes through, the ops person hits the button and it blares the Lone Ranger
theme song.
Yeah,
that's great.
It's so awesome. Yeah, because like first time I heard it, I was like, man, and I was like, oh, I know what that is.
That's cool.
Up, really cool. So I had a good time there, and then I don't want to keep us all night here because got
keep going,
a
man.
lot more to go, but so then Great Northern to California, came back, all 1039s pretty much on the Great Northern. So besides like myself and the squad bosses, like everyone's about out of time. So we were trying to maybe squeak out one more roll, but like they had cranked that year. They had quite a few hours, so they're all pretty done, and being newer firefighters, I think it was good that we didn't push them on another roll.
Right.
So Great Northern was done, I think, pretty much when we got back from California. Yeah, it was when we got back from California. Had our end of the year crew party. It was a good time, and then at that point, there's no perm available for me at West Yellowstone either, because I found out West Yellowstone was also tied to the forest, so their budget's tight too. And those are still the days where people didn't vacate perms very easily, you know. So even if you got a perm 6, you held onto that sucker for a while.
Yep.
So I put in for a temp position in Missoula, and it was an upgrade though. It was a 6, and so I ended up getting that, and it was kind of cool because
this is 2015,
2014, so
or 14,
end of 2014, they did like
14.
a short temp hire, and I just threw my name in the hat and still just chasing a perm and still kind of always want to jump onto Missoula. And then they had the DC3.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, man, I want to get a DC3 jump.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the big motivations to go there. So the dream was the DC3 jump into the Bob Marshall, was the dream. And so chasing that a little bit. And I think I was demobbing off a fire. And I want to say my wife and her little bro met me at the jump base, and the pilots are so cool. They're giving us a tour, and my brother-in-law's in the pilot seat of the DC3, and the pilot's giving a good run through on everything. I was like, man, I never even sat in the front seat, like
Miss Montana.
No, different one.
The other one.
Yeah, they got rid of that. The other one they had just not too long ago. And,
gotcha.
But beautiful aircraft, and kind of hanging out, and then Mitch, the training foreman, comes out, and he's like, hey, I'd like to offer you a position. And I was like, I thought he'd mess with me. And I was like, oh, like, for what? He's like, the position you applied for. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you're interested still? I was like, absolutely. He's like, perfect. Well, it's yours. I was like, oh, Mitch, are you serious? And so I was pumped, like, I get to chase down this dream. And, like little dreams, that was one little dream I had of being a jumper as a DC3.
Yeah.
So end up going there, go down to Region 8 that winter, get my first ice storm experience in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Huh.
Yeah, doing, down there in burn mod with all the rest of the jumpers. It was pretty cool because it was like one of my friends from NCSB, another fellow from McCall, And this fella is the only person I know of who's base jumped off the smelter stack in Anaconda.
Ah,
Yeah, he didn't want to
yeah.
talk. He didn't really want to talk
I've heard
about
of it happening. Yeah,
Yeah, he didn't really want to talk about it too much, but I was like, dude, that's so cool, man. I'm from Whitehall. I'm like right down the road. And he's like, shh. But he was a cool dude.
Cool.
Yeah, and then there was a fella from Reading, and I'm trying to think who else is there. But it just, just a small group of us, and I'm trying to remember how many we had. I think it was 8. Oh, no, we split up. So, like, 4 of us went there, and then the other 4 stayed in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. And so we got iced in, and, like, I'd heard about these ice storms. That's, like, what they always tell you about. I'm, like, not thinking much of it. Like, I've been through blizzards and stuff. So, like,
Right.
not a big deal, but it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's heavy, man. I mean, it was in, like, a matter of an hour maybe that ice storm hammered us, and, like, a inch or more thick ice on the road. Like, just nuts how fast it comes in. Because they call us off the project. We were out thinning, doing some burn prep, and they're like, hey, we need you to come back to the district. And we come back, like I think maybe they got a fire. Like, what's going on? They're like, well, we got, ice storm coming. It's like, it's time for you guys to go. Like,
Yeah,
get your
get
hotel
out of
now.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, don't even stop to get food or whatever. Just go. So we're like, okay, did you hear that? It's weird. It almost sounds like a siren.
People walk by every once in a while. I see
Oh.
them out there.
Got some folks hanging. So, yeah, the ice storm hits, and we're in a hotel, so we're just kind of riding it out. And so I'm still not really thinking much of it. I'm like, that's pretty crazy. And then go to sleep, and the next morning, the whole town shut down. So
Ice everywhere.
Ice everywhere. Can't drive anywhere, can't do anything. So group of us are like, well, let's go see if we can find a restaurant or something. Like, check it out downtown. And Hot Springs, Arkansas is pretty cool. Like, it's got links to, like, the Major League Baseball teams from back in the day, and Al Capone, and a bunch of these cool, like, old bathhouses.
Yeah.
But they're all shut down, so we don't get to check them out. But there's, like, 2 restaurants open still in town. I don't know how they end up making it to the restaurant, but really good food, so we got to go hang there, and that was cool. And then after a couple days, things thaw out, and then we ended up going to Clarksville, Arkansas, which is, like, in the Ozarks. So we got to do some cool work up in the Ozarks, and
Cool.
And then help drive the rigs back to Reading, and then start my 2015 season. And that was probably one of the best seasons of my fire career, just because,
Is
like,
this the Alaska year?
yeah, went to Alaska for like 3 months.
That's
and
cool. You just stayed up there for that whole time?
Yeah, stayed up there the whole time.
Isn't that's kind of extraordinary, isn't it, to be there that long, or not really?
Oh, not really. Like, if you get up there early, like I got there pretty early, so I was up there for Ram Air training, and then came back, and then went right back up. So that part of the reason I was there so long, because Ram Air training was like close to a month, and then just being out there for, well, I think it was like maybe a little longer. I can't remember how I ended up being up there for almost like 3 months, but I guess it's maybe 2 and some change. But
That's cool.
Yeah, because
some of those Alaska jumpers stick around for a real long time.
Yeah.
you know?
Oh man, it's old man jumper country, because the tundra are
It's so cool. They just stay there.
yeah, and there's just so much oxygen. So, like, you're in the tundra's like a big pillow sometimes. Like, so, man, if you're jumping good jumps and all that air, and flying that Ram Air parachute, right, man, you can have a long career as a jumper up there.
Yeah.
And some of those guys don't even like to come to the lower 48, because
Yeah.
the risk goes up. Like, they don't have as much padding in their suits. Like, they don't have the weight, and
Because the terrain's more forgiving, you mean?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Like, they don't have to really worry about it as much. You know? So,
Interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
they may have changed it, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was when I was there. And I don't think they use fire shelters. At least they weren't when I was there, because they don't.
Fort Wainwright's the
They don't
main, where the main jump base stuff is,
Yep.
right?
Out of Fairbanks, Alaska.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like right near where Midnight Sun hangs out and all that.
Yeah,
when my pal Dave was running Midnight Sun.
Oh yeah, Midnight Sun and Chena both run right next door to the base. Right
Yeah.
there in Fort Wainwright.
Close, yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, they got a big, like, cafeteria for the BLM folks, I guess they are.
Did you ever get to go to the cafeteria in Missoula before it went away at the jump base?
No, it was operational.
That was so cool.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, 'cause the kitchen's
We
awesome.
used to eat there a lot when we'd cycle through, if we were waiting to fly out and it was the correct time of day, they just open it up, and it was so good.
You came up in such a good era, like the Magruder, like ranger station when they had the cook? Because you got to see that too, right?
Not when it was active.
Oh,
Yeah, I got here after West Fork absorbed it, and
Oh,
then it was just a work center. They didn't, staff it
yeah. 'Cause
like they did before 70. I think 73 was when it absorbed with West Fork.
damn it, West Fork. Because it was Deep
Yeah.
Creek before that, right? Was that what it was
That
called
was the
before?
original name. They
Yeah.
named it after the creek that comes down from Nez Pass,
Oh,
Deep
gotcha.
Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for whatever reason, because of the battlefield and stuff, I guess they changed it to Magruder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering. Yeah.
I think it was still called. I think it was called Magruder before West Fork absorbed it, and I couldn't tell you when they made that change from Deep Creek.
Yeah, I don't either. I just remember like someone talking about Deep Creek. I'm like, where in the world is that? And then like that's when I figured out. I was like, oh, Magruder. Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you were telling me about some other place you were eating. Getting like meals from the Job Corps back when they used to do that.
Say that again.
Oh, the food you're getting from the Job Corps back in the day when they had the cook on there and.
Oh, at our Job Corps Center, you mean down here?
Yeah.
Yeah, where that was just a work center when the Bitterroot IR crew started
Oh, really?
in '63. That was where their quarters were.
Oh,
And
cool.
I've seen some old pictures of it. There were a bunch of, not a lot, but a bunch of buildings there
Yeah.
before they decided the Department of, I don't know what department,
Labor, I think.
Department of Labor
Yeah.
ran them at least then.
Mhm.
Yeah, but
Still does.
that was later. It was full-fledged in '76, so I don't know exactly when they started the actual Job Corps Center, but yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, when they talked about shutting it down, when they were shutting down some Job Corps centers around the nation, some of the folks that were working there, the fire folks, I guess it's Forest Service property or something.
Yeah.
So they're like, whatever, give it. Go ahead and take off. We'll keep it as the Forest Service then.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I guess.
I hope they don't. It's a good program, man. It's been good.
It is a great program. Yeah, just getting to work
And
with the students.
back in the day, we're getting a little sidetracked here, but back in the day, a lot of us on the districts got squad boss experience by the Job Corps could send out 2 to 3 20-person hand crews.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of us got the opportunity to go with them as squad bosses from time to time,
That's huge,
which was
man.
good for us.
Yeah.
And it was good for them too, and
Yeah.
they could send out, like, sometimes in the heyday, 8 camp crews.
Yeah.
They people went all over the place.
Which is awesome for folks who don't know is that the students don't get paid unless they're on an incident. So going even on as a camp crew or a 20-man crew, like they get some money, and then that's all pretty much investment for
they
them.
make some good money. I don't know exactly what they go as, if they go as ADs or what. I'm not sure, but
I think it's AD because I was talking to one of the students yesterday, and it's like, we don't get hazard overtime. It all kind of evens out because their AD rate's pretty high. I was like, that's a good
but
deal.
considering that they make virtually nothing unless they're gone on fires and stuff, if it was a busy season, the kids would do good.
Oh yeah, really good, and they have no expenses, right? Because they don't pay for they have to pay for their food or board or anything like that.
Good deal.
Yeah.
So 3 months in Alaska, huh?
Yeah. So real close. I don't think maybe it wasn't quite 3 months. 3 months sticks out to me. But anyways, so I was there for I will just say 3 months.
Did you spend time way out in the middle of nowhere on some of the
Mhm.
fires and stuff?
Yeah, totally. We're out in like McGrath, and I thought I heard a siren. And so I was out in McGrath mostly. Did a lot of flying. We flew by Denali like 5 times or something. Like a lot.
Close?
Yeah.
Close
and
to
I
it?
couldn't see it.
Oh.
It was smoked in. The whole Alaska was smoked in so bad that year that I never saw
bummer.
it. Yeah.
And a lot of times it's clouded over, too.
Oh, yeah, probably didn't help.
When
either.
I went up to visit Dave and Randy, it was the end of February, beginning of March, and usually then it's pretty wintry, but we decided to take their dogs and go ski joring in Denali Park, and the day we went it was crystal clear. You could see the mountain from like 80 miles away. It was cool.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was neat.
Yeah, we like the first night we're in McGrath, and I think we're smoked in at this point, so no one's leaving, no one's coming. Like in half, maybe not quite half, but a chunk of Idaho Panhandle is there, and the supervisor there, I think his name was Chris Smith, and turns out Bronson's little brother Dustin got flown with those guys 'cause he's one of the lighter guys on the crew. So part of the Panhandle's there, but they're split. The crew is, so they can't do anything, and we're waiting on the rest of the crew to meet him there.
Yeah.
But we end up going down to the local watering hole, local tavern there, and just kind of the hang where everyone goes after hours, and like even the pilots and stuff. And the pilots, call it a short night because that 8-hour window,
Right.
bottle throttle, and they can't break that. And,
Right.
But it was just cool. They come on hang. Usually just have like a beer maybe, and that's all I was like trying to get into as well, because Crohn's and just want to be fresh for fire in case it goes. But it's light, so it's I was there around the solstice, and so it's light. It's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were there pretty late one night, and a handful of us, because like I said, we're grounded, nothing could happen, and so like we end up like riding bikes around McGrath at like 2 a.m, because it's just daylight out.
That's
so
crazy.
like, it's like this is not, and I'm like, I'm never gonna experience this again. So like we were just like all just kind of pumped. We were driving around, or like riding around, and then the bunk, like little bunkhouse they had for us, was just a ton of bunk beds, and it's just like blacked out curtains, loud fans rolling, and
Get it dark. Yeah.
I get it dark, and then bust up the noise a little bit with a really loud fan, and so I slept pretty good there. But it was just so weird, man. Like going to sleep at light, waking up at the same light,
It's a whole different world. Yeah.
Oh, it's so weird.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And so one of the pilot gals, she was, I think the plane was called a Caravan, like a passenger plane.
Oh yeah.
So she was shuttling around, and she was working for a family business, and I think it was called like a show she was on, was like Flying Alaska, because one of the jumpers from Grangeville was also like working on his pilot license and was nerding out about pilot stuff. He's like,
Huh.
"You look so familiar," and she's like, "Oh, one of those faces." So she's like dodging, and finally it hits him. He's like, "I know you," and she's like, and she was like super cool. So she like flew us around most of the time too.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cool little connection there. And
Yeah.
so I got some fire jumps there. Nothing too crazy, just like really interesting when you leave like solid ground of McGrath, go on a plane, I jumped out of the Canadian DC-3, which is super cool.
Huh.
So I got 2 DC-3 jumps in a year,
Cool.
the Missoula one, the Canadian one, and then landing on like the mattress tundra thing that everyone talks about. It's really like walking on a waterbed. It is the weirdest feeling.
That's cool.
Yeah, it wore me out though, because I had all my pack gear, like all my gear packed up.
Trying to walk in it. Yeah.
Yeah, with 100 pounds, and
It's kind of like unstable.
Yeah, really unstable. All your little stabilizer muscles are firing, trying to keep you upright, and it was a wild feeling, walking on a lily pad or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get there, and then I got to figure out how to fight fire in this stuff, and water's the best thing. So we were just going around and from like puddle to puddle with these little Hondas, and pumping water out and stirring it the best we could.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like it was like Bethel. I want to say it was where we were at. Bettles is kind of in my brain too. Like there's both of them are in Alaska, but I can't remember exactly. I want to say Bethel. It's one we're close to. But then Tulisic was like one other place we went to. I was just talking to Therese about this last night, so it's kind of fresh in my brain because the Canadian fire being kind of similar to Alaskan fire.
Grizzly bears?
No experience. No grizzly bears experiences with me. Yeah.
Were you near places where you guys could get supplement food with fish and stuff?
Well, the natives, the first thing we showed up, and man, they were armed to the teeth. Like, oh man, this is how I die. Yeah, because I drifted. They let us out a little bit farther out. Being the rounds, like the Alaska jumpers aren't used to spotting rounds that much, so it's probably the same as the rams, but like you just can't cover the ground on the round. So like me and my JP were a little further out, so I had been the last one to get it with the rest of the crew, and I can't really tell, but the locals are kind of in the trees and the jumpers are all out in the open area, and as soon as I get close enough to realize like what the jumper bros are talking to, being these native folks with like AKs and all kinds of like automatic looking weapons, and I was like, oh, son of a gun, like, is this where it goes down? But what ended up happening, I found out, was that we were jumping a sacred island of this local tribe, and so that's why like we're passing all these fires. There's fires everywhere. I'm like, man, what, are we gonna get one of these? And then so we finally jumped this little island surrounded by water, and I'm like, huh. But ended up working out pretty cool, because I ended up getting crew boss experience, and
cool.
I ended up getting a call in a scooper, because it was just in some thick stuff it was not going out, so we called a scooper, and it just smashed it, and the turnaround time is like nothing because it's right there,
lakes and stuff.
The water's right there, so that scooper just,
that's awesome.
It's a plane that scoops water and has a belly tank, and just hammered it. It was awesome.
Cool.
So it was super cool. And on that same fire, our same fire assignment. I was with one of my best buddies from Whitehall, John Halovnia, who I went to high school with,
Huh.
who was just a year above me. He rookied the year before me and Bronson, I think. And Bronson's from Whitehall. I'm from Whitehall. John's from Whitehall.
Cool.
And somehow the shuffle just works out, Big Ernie or whatever it is, and me and Johnny end up being jump partners, JPs. So the next fire I jumped, and Halovnia wasn't there when I jumped the fire, my buddy John, and I come back and all of a sudden there he is, my high school buddy. I'm like, oh, dude, so good to see you. Yeah, and then so we go and jump out this other spot in the middle of nowhere by this like raw station, and then we end up doing like this cabin protection, just a cool time, and it ends up we end up getting split. There's 4 of us who jumped it, and then we got split 2 of us, and so me and John end up going on this other structure pro, and then the other 2 go up like upriver a little ways, and they actually had a little incident with a pretty good sized bear, so. They were in a pretty rough looking cabin. I think they ended up sleeping inside of it because of the bear was patrolling.
Huh.
We didn't have any issues. It was really cool. And
yeah.
So like the odds of like my high school buddy, in all of Alaska meeting up in McGrath.
I know, that's so cool.
Yeah, I got a video of us going out the door together. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's part of was my highlight. And then the next fire. So then I get back to the lower 48, go out to Miles City. And it just keeps getting better. Because then go out to Miles City. Always wanted to get a Miles City jump, and it's got one of the cooler logos, Catfish with the Pulaski. So I can't remember how it went down, but I want to say I can't remember exactly how it went down because I ended up being like the only person in Miles City because everyone jumped on like I got a forced day off, so I had to take a day off in place.
Yeah.
So I was just roaming around Miles City on a bro bike, going from like watering hole to watering hole, like actual water. Like there's like a pond in the middle of Miles City. I went and hung out and did that. Then there's like another little watering hole, like pond, a little further outside of town. So I went and swam there too, and just kind of staying cool and checking things out. And took myself out to lunch in Miles City, and then get back to the base in the morning, and it's just me. And it was like, oh man, me and Rocky, and so Rocky's kind of a quiet guy, and I'm just like bugging him on and off all day, and eventually he locked me out. But it was just fun messing with him. And then everyone returns, and then we get a fire call, and it ends up being I can't remember exactly how it played out. Oh, so we end up getting a fire call, and I think I hear Butte. And I'm not the jumper in charge, so I don't have the headset on, so I don't know where we're going really.
Right.
But then my dad, like, you fly low enough, you get service. So we're in the Sherpa, and my dad's like, hey, why don't you come put this thing out, and sends me a picture, and it's the Tobacco Root Mountains, and it's a fire that's real close to Brownback.
Huh.
Like, I can recognize it right away. Grew up right underneath there. I'm like, man. And we get turned around, and we're going back. It's like, man, I'll see what I can do, but it looks like they, other needs for us. And then whoever, I think Whitehall was trying to see if they can get enough people to fight it, and then they ended up grabbing. They didn't have enough folks to get her done, and we ended up just kind of being in the area, so it just worked out somehow that we got called up to do it. So we go at this beautiful like sunset jump into the Tobacco Root Mountains, Tobacco Root Mountains where I grew up. Yeah, and then so we go and it ends up bumping into an old fire scar where the line was still like decently intact, so we're able to use a bunch of the old line and improve it. And then the Whitehall crew was cruising around the other side, and we ended up kind of meeting in the middle, and ends up being one of my other really good buddies, Mitch, and my other good buddy Chris. And
nice.
Yeah, so like, I had an idea these guys were there, but I had no idea, because they weren't talking on the radio. They were running the saw, and I was also running the saw,
Yeah.
So, meet them in the middle of the saw line. It's like, oh man,
that's cool.
Yeah, so it's so cool. And then my dad ended up coming up that evening, drove up in his Jeep. So
all right,
yeah, I got to hang out for a little bit, and then
that's kind of unique.
Yeah,
jumping a fire right near home.
Yeah, right near home. Yeah, and then we go to Miles City, and it's about time to swap out the crew. They give us the option to stay if we wanted to, and happened to be my wife's birthday, and she has no idea I'm coming back. So my estimated date was like a week away or something.
Yeah.
So I was like, it sucks, can't be back for your birthday. It's like, man, bad deal, and like I'm in the air, flying to Missoula. And I was like, one of her friends, and my sister-in-law and a few people were taking her out. A few of her friends were taking her out to eat, and So I was like, oh, you guys still there? What you guys plans from here? She's like, I don't know. I think we're just going to have like maybe a drink and call it a night. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just landed. So I'm like boogieing to get down my stuff. And then I had a Subaru WRX at the time. So I get in that thing and I just mob it down to the restaurant she's at. And it just blew her away. That all sounds there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty unique.
Yeah, it was super cool. Yeah, so surprised her on her birthday, and so had a great time. And then like the next day, we get a fire call. Oh no, so yeah, the next day we get a fire call. We jump Idaho again, and then I run into this is just outside of Ponderay, so Sandpoint, Idaho, and we ended up just jumping the spot. That was Type 1 team. I'm trying to remember the gal's name who was the IC at the time, but the operations ends up being my mentor and friend, Joe Sampson. So, I hear him on the radio, and I don't remember if I reached out then, but then we get back into Chow that the last night. So we spiked out, on that spot. And then last night we get back into camp, and it's a beautiful camp. It's at like some resort, awesome food. Like everything's just great.
Yeah.
And, out of nowhere, get this like big old paw on my shoulder, and it's my buddy Joe Sampson, and he's like, how's it been out there? I was like, hey man, thanks for the call. Like he's part of the reason why I ended up getting called up, and jumping that spot, and it, got us out the door and got them to help, because we were pretty much grounded at that point,
Yeah.
And so it was like cool to talk to him. But the Panhandle just got hammered that year, so we go back to reset, and I get a jump request like that night, text message, like we just got back. And I was like, oh, all right. And what are you thinking? We're going back to the Panhandle and kind of close to the Avery country where it's really steep. So I was like, man, all right, going back after it. So me and this Alaska jumper named Ty Humphrey are, on the jump load, like think we're, gonna be getting in the DC3 and taking off. And
yeah.
I think there's like 10 of us, which would fit on the DC3, but they just sent 8 towards a fire, and it ends up not being the Panhandle. I think it ended up being somewhere near Augusta, like Benchmark or something.
Huh.
And I was like, oh man, that's cool. Like they're going near the Bob. And I was like, man, kind of wish I was jumping the Bob. And then Ops is like, all right, now for you guys. And I'm thinking like they're having to stay for rehab or, make some food boxes, like help out with, stuff we got behind on. He's like, we got a jump mission for you boys. I was like, oh, yeah. And I'm thinking, like, oh, here comes the Panhandle one. I knew it. And they're like, you got structure protection. I was like, oh, that kind of sounds weird. And like, in the Bob Marshall. I was like, Bob Marshall Williams jump? I was like, yeah. And I got so pumped. I just, like, flung off my T-shirt and threw the sucker, because I don't like wearing a T-shirt under my yellow, especially flying, because you're already super hot. So I usually throw my T-shirt into my leg pocket, and then when I land, I'll throw it back on, or at least that night I'll have a dry T-shirt to change into.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I threw the sucker into the oblivion, never got it back, and it was my favorite T-shirts. But so I got my Bob Marshall jump, spent like a little over a month in the Bob Marshall, ended up hiking out like in some fresh snow. It was super cool, and that was pretty much the end of my season there. And then did some traveling down into Georgia, me and the wife and the dog, and North Carolina, and checked out some of that country.
Cruising around.
Yeah. And then took a detail in 16 to Whitehall as an engine boss. Got my engine boss signed off. Mike King signed off my IC4 that year. And then, so after I took the detail, I didn't even know Mike King had taken the engine foreman job in Whitehall.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, he sends me a text one late night, and he's like, not real late, but like a later night, just more for the story. But he's like, hey, heard you're going to be working in Whitehall this summer. And I was like, oh, yeah? Who'd you talk to? He's like, I heard you might be working for me this summer. I was like, wait, working for you? And then he told me he took the engine foreman position there, and because his wife had taken a position in Bozeman. So
Kim.
Yep, Kim.
I know Kim really well.
Yeah, because she was a lookout, right?
No, she worked with us at Stevensville in 2000.
Oh, really?
On the fire crew there.
Well,
and I'd met her earlier. She and my pal Joni Cummings Joni was on our crew, on the Hot Shot crew in last part of 93, all of 94 and 95. And she was on Grayback.
Oh, really?
So Kim was on Grayback with her for a season or two.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, she staffed Willow for a minute, though, because King told me he went up to Willow to visit her a couple times.
Yeah, she probably did somewhere in there. Yeah.
I think probably towards the end of the fire crew.
Once I went back to West Fork and stuff, I kind of lost track of where people were.
Well, because you're on your island out there in paradise. You
Yeah.
know? Oh man, what a spot the West Fork is.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. Yeah, not worth checking out if you haven't seen it. But yeah, and so I'm working for him, and he had a great summer. Spent a lot of time out in Billings, Mouse City country, and
Cool.
and he just let me like run the show and get my engine boss signed off, and then
Excellent.
Yeah, a great crew that year too. Just some like younger folks that were just really stoked about fire.
Cool.
Yeah, some real go-getters. It was great. And then 17, so at this point my Crohn's is starting to like really bother me. Like 15 was pretty rough on me, just a real busy year, and afterwards my guts were pretty well
I don't know how you
smoked.
did some of it, man, with, the crazy stuff we have to eat on fires and everything.
Yeah, it caught up to me a little bit in Alaska, and so I was like, man, like it was kind of like I had enough downtime on that fire where my guts were just wrecked that I was like, yeah, this isn't long term for me, you know?
Yeah.
And because I was on all my medication and stuff and trying to do the best I could, and I'm losing a ton of weight because you're burning so many calories, and I can't eat enough to keep it going, you know? And
Yeah.
so at the end of that season, I about hung it up. We were I think at the end of 15, I think, or no, it was the end of 16. I think we went down to Arizona. My wife was a traveling occupational therapist, so we went down to Arizona, and I just like had been thinking about it and kind of stressing over jumping, and my guts were in bad shape, so I called the jump base, and I
Just can't do it.
I was like, I can't do it. I gotta quit. So
I
like,
want to, but
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they kind of talked me out of it, like, whoa, man, like, because at this point I've got like, I don't know, 12 or 13 years in fire already, you know.
Mhm.
So they're like, man, like, you sure? Like, there's some options here. So they worked with me, and I talked to one of my friends on the Billings Fire Department, and like at the time I thought it was just diet. I didn't know like sleep was another issue that I was having that was really a problem. So
Yeah.
so I work with the jump base, and then talk to my friend and get the structure fire stuff kind of figured out. And I had got my EMT luckily the year before, so
Okay.
I was able to apply for structure fire departments in Montana. So I took the consortium, and part of the reason why I took another detail in 17 is so I could take the consortium because it's in like end of June or something. At least it was that year. So I was like, I'd refresh. And then I, wouldn't be jump available because I wouldn't be able to go anywhere because I'd have to be available for this consortium, and I just wanted to train. So
Right.
I took a detail to work for Karen Stockman, botanist for the Lolo at the time. And she's great, so awesome working for her, and learned a lot. I didn't know that side of the Forest Service, so
Yeah.
got to learn a lot of the plant stuff, do some cool weed surveys up in the old Highway 12. I can't remember the name of that old timber logging country.
Oh, okay.
Something with a P.
Plum
Creek.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Plum Creek
Up the-
country. Yeah.
Yeah, up in Plum Creek country. And
Yeah.
so it was cool. I got to see a lot of that country, and there's no one back there because all the gates. Lots of ticks, though. So
Yeah.
I ran a lot of that. But so that was cool. Spent that season, did the consortium, did pretty well. And during the practice, I about crushed myself, though, because I came out hot, and I went too hard, and I barely finished it during the practice, the physical part of the consortium.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured out how to pace myself and breeze through it. Not really breeze through it, but made it look like I breezed through it the second time, so that like, because I was talking to my friend and talking to the guys at the practice, they're like, it's a lot more impressive looking if you slow down a little bit and look like it's not taking much effort. And I was like, yeah, good call. So like second time I went through, like I wanted to be panting, but I was just breathing through my nose and making it seem like it was no sweat, to try to impress them. But after I got like out of the room, I was dying. But yeah, so then go through all that and all the application processes and do some interviews and trying to get on one of the bigger departments like Billings or Missoula and Missoula Rural, the two I was trying to get on, and I interviewed with both and just didn't land it. I think Missoula was only hiring like one person, Missoula City, and then Rural, I think something weird happened with their hiring that year. I don't know if I was even like a top pick for them anyways, but I mean enough to get an interview.
Right.
And then I interviewed with Billings, and then kind of like with NCSB, my last interview was with Great Falls, and I had my interview polished at that point, so I did a pretty good job, and they were a great group of folks anyway, so like I was pretty happy and kind of felt full circle because my grandma grew up there, and now I'm on the firefighting up there.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and But then I found out, thinking it was diet the whole time that was throwing me off. Then I find out that it's rest. Like if I don't get enough rest, then I'm in bad shape. And diet's still important, but rest is the bigger beast for me.
Yeah.
So the academy, I'm starting to feel a little funky, and I make it through all right. And it's still a challenge, it's designed to be. And so get through that, and I'm pretty pumped because I'm real fireman, I feel like now, and getting on shift. And the first shift's pretty rough. Like I feel like really bad afterwards. Like my Crohn's is just like going bananas, and I'm like, well, that's a bad sign. But I got 2 days off, so I'm like, all right, whatever. Second shift, man, it's worse, bad. But I got 4 days off, so I'm like, I'm fine, So I come back for my third shift, and it's like still getting worse, and like I'm barely making calls because I'm like in the bathroom, all the time, and just drained, and everything feels heavy because I'm losing weight again.
Yeah.
So after just like not that many shifts, I had to throw in the towel there, and I was only like worked for Great Falls for like 3 or 4 months. It wasn't very long because it just wrecked me real fast, that shift work. I talked to my primary doc in Whitehall, Dr. Rife. He's a great guy, and he's like a second father, 'cause it's a small town. I've known him since I was a kid, and so he talked to you like you're his kid, he really cares. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm thinking about going back to school." And he's like, "No, like, what are you doing to yourself? What, firefighting?" I was like, yeah, I didn't really think that one through. He's like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "Shift works hard on healthy people, man. Like, what do you think it's gonna do to you?" He's like, "Do you want to see 50?" And he's like getting a little stern with me. I'm like, yeah, it'd be kind of nice, I guess. And he's like, "Yeah, well, you got to start treating your body right, and making smarter decisions." But it's cool because he's giving me like a dad talk. So I'm like,
So just briefly, for those that might not know, what is Crohn's?
Yeah, so Crohn's is an autoimmune disorder that attacks your entire gastrointestinal tract. So like pretty much from your mouth to your butthole can be affected. And for me, it's mostly in my small intestine, maybe at the start of my large intestine, is where I have a lot of the issues. And like my last season in fire, which was last year, was real bad. Like I had a lot of blood
when you were still at Sula.
Still in Sula, yeah.
And what does it do? Does it like ulcerate?
Ulcerate, yeah. It makes it really soft, and then you get these little like ulcers and I end up having one like get so deep that I end up hitting a vesicle is what they thought, but I lost a lot of blood in a short period of time.
Oh wow!
Like lightheaded and like fell over in the kind of like went down on my own power, but more of a guided fall in the good food store last year, and because I'd lost so much blood, and that's the closest I've ever been to a transfusion.
Wow!
And I've had some injuries where I've lost some blood and nothing like that, and
is Crohn's something that just people randomly
that's what it
somehow
sounds like.
Get it?
Yeah, they try to link it to genetics, but they're not sure if that's an issue or what the deal is there. Like
anybody else in your family ever had it?
No, that's a problem. I mean, my mom always kind of talked about some gut issues, and she had rheumatoid arthritis, which is also an autoimmune. So like it could be some connection there. But when I first got it, I was doing a bunch of research, and like no one in third world countries had it. So I kind of started attributing to like diet and
what we eat,
yeah, like preservatives,
and God knows we eat enough stuff with preservatives in it.
Oh man,
MREs and all those wonderful things.
Oh, that's exactly where my brain went. Like the MREs and stuff. My life.
What am I doing?
I know, man. The old bag lunch. Yeah, so that's what I kind of think it was. Like a combination of a lot of things and like some stressors and stuff that just kind of came up with me, and so. Then battling with that, but now that I got a fire, things are a little better too, and so.
How long were you at Sula?
Just 1 year.
Just that one season.
Yeah, just that one season. Yeah, starting the winter. I'm trying to think exactly where I started, but they brought me on kind of early, so they're trying to have me help with hiring, and then.
Yeah.
I just 4 months ago I just left Sula, so I mean I was still on until pretty recent, and then I got this position.
Right. Yeah.
So, first fire season without being any fire for me.
Your last ranger district was my first ranger district. I mean, it was an independent district still then.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of wild.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
2022 for me, I guess. Well, like part of 23, but mostly 2022.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Pretty wild.
Wow.
Yeah, so that kind of wraps up my fire. Well, I guess that from structure fire, I took a just like a season off, like not even a full year really. It was 2018 and season of 2019, and then COVID hit. And I was trying to go to physical therapy school, so I was trying to go to PT school. And my bachelor's is health and human performance, so it's like exercise science. So most of my prereqs I already got in my undergrad. So I just needed, I retook human anatomy and physiology just to get a higher grade. And then physics, I didn't have physics, OChem, and then something else.
So you didn't get a degree then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I got my bachelor's degree, but I never got my doctorate because
Gotcha.
I got all the prereqs. So I went through physics 1 and 2, physics-based calculus-based physics 1 and 2, which I'd never taken calculus or trigonometry.
Huh.
But I almost got an A in it. I was like B, just a B plus.
Yeah, you're lucky. When I was never good at math, I failed algebra.
Oh, I'm horrible at math. I just figured out how to my way around physics just to pass. But in that OChem, I wasn't ever very good at chemistry. But you're older, you don't have this distraction when you go back. And I just lived in the library and the tutors and talked to the professor. And I was able to do all right in OChem and did pretty good in physics and human anatomy. And all there was taking the GRE test and a couple more observation hours. I had almost all my observation hours, but then COVID hit and everything shut down. So I was like,
yeah, that kind of affected a lot of things.
Yeah, I was like, what now?
Years.
Yeah, so
wow.
Got back on the COVID hire in Stevensville, and that's how it brought me to Bitterroot.
Yeah,
in 2020.
And here you are at the SO right now, anyway.
Yeah, at the SO. Yeah, working at the SO. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not podcasting at the SO though.
See, man, you've done a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, it's been a great run, man.
I knew you did. I mean, I haven't heard a lot of your stories, and now I have, and I love them.
Yeah.
But it's like all of us, that's what this podcast thing is so cool that you're doing it, is because it's a vehicle for all of us from as far back as me, can kind of tell our stories through what we've done in fire and otherwise. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this when I first got that idea of me interviewing you, because you've done a lot of cool stuff too.
Oh, I appreciate it. But when you're in the shoes, it just feels whatever, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like for me, like looking at my experience, it just seems like anybody else's experience. It doesn't seem like, anything too crazy, Yeah,
I know, but everybody's stories are good, and we've all got a lot of similar things, but a lot of different things too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually kind of like speaking of that, like some of the guests that I've had on or wanted to have on, they're like, I don't know, man, my stories aren't that cool. I'm like, that's because you're living them. Like for everyone else on the outside looking in, and like the wildland fire, it seems big, but it's not. Like when I became a smoke jumper, so many people didn't have a clue what it was.
Yeah,
I remember like going out to eat in Boise, and it was just me and all jumpers, in our group. And at first, one of the guys was calling us grasshopper biologists or something like that, because like just trying to downplay it or something, and just messing with him. And then finally we couldn't back it up because we know nothing about it. So finally one of the other guys was like, oh yeah, we're smoke jumpers. And these guys were like, what? And they're like, wow, we're grasshopper biologists.
Yeah.
So even in Pocatello, they didn't have a clue, and they have a spike base there.
And another good service, like I said, of what you're doing with these podcasts is that a lot of people, like you're saying, a lot of people have no idea what we really do.
Yeah.
And you see pictures on the national news of hotshot crews on some fire, but what do they do? They don't really know. Or the same with the jumpers, the same with district crews, the same with all of it.
All of it, yeah. Repellers.
And it's a good vehicle for us to tell our stories, and and it's pretty true that most of us are pretty passionate about it.
Yeah.
'Cause it's a pretty freaking cool life.
It is,
It can be hard. It can be tough on folks with families and stuff like that at times. But I mean, it's a pretty cool life, and it's nice to get the word out there why we like it.
Yeah.
For the adventure and for the camaraderie and all those things.
Yeah.
Taking care of one another. I mean, it's a job where, whether it's 2 or 3 of you on a fire, on a district fire, or whether you're in a 20-person crew situation, that we all take care of one another, because that's what we do. And that's when you pull off a hard job and everybody's safe, and you've done good, hard work, and you feel really good.
Yeah.
You're tired, but you feel really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, man. It's weird, like that kind of like love comes out of you and everyone around you. Like you just feel like everybody's like really happy to be part of the team and with each other.
You bond with these people that you'd probably never ever see otherwise.
Yeah.
Come from all parts of the country.
Yep.
And end up here in this little valley.
Yeah.
I remember when I started, Jim Leverton was from Long Island. There were people from all over the place that ended up here.
Yeah.
And those were good stories, too. They're just like, how did you end up here,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's...
And doing this, what we're doing.
Yeah. Totally. I think that's kind of what sparked some of the curiosity way back when and kind of started, maybe the little snowball rolling towards this was that, like, as you said, like you show up on a fire, no matter what size it is, as long as it's like where there's other resources showing up, you're like, hey, who are you? What do you do? How'd you get here?
Yeah.
So you kind of do like a little interview of folks with you anyways,
And then there's a special times like you've been talking about tonight where you end up on a fire with somebody from your hometown.
Yeah.
Or I'm on a fire in Florida with the hotshot crew and I run into somebody that I was on a fire in Washington State with or something the year before or 5 years before or something. It's just it's pretty cool.
Oh, so cool, man.
Pretty
and then
cool.
With fire folks, because the bond is so deep, really, that when you run into them again, it's like you haven't skipped a beat,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, man, how you been? Or gal, if it's a gal that you worked with,
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Oh, it's so awesome, man.
Well, cool, man. I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, thanks, Rene. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. I'm glad we were able to pull it off because we've been talking about this for a long time, and
yeah,
I'm glad folks have gotten to hear your story too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it because someone asked me about it a while ago, and I think you'd mentioned this a while ago too, so it was already like kind of in the works, and they're like, man, you should probably do something like, some kind of little blurb on yourself. I was like, well, it comes out in the podcast, So, yeah, like you said, this worked out great.
Little knowing that we've been talking about it for a while, the two of us.
Yeah, totally, man. Just waiting to set it up.
And it was cool that we were able to keep it secret till now.
Yeah, totally, man. And it worked out really good this way. Because originally I was going to try to hustle up and meet you in Salmon Mountain when you were up there this summer and doing the lookout deal. Yeah,
this was better. It would have been tough to get the right stuff up there to do it. It would have been cool, but yeah.
Yeah, and the timing, it would have been really hard.
And we're here in this beautiful Airstream too, so it's good stuff.
Yeah, it worked out great. Well, thank you so much, Rene. I really appreciate it.
You bet, buddy.
Yeah, and thanks for everyone who tunes in and listens.
Yeah, thanks for listening to us.
Yeah, appreciate you.